Welcome to Self-Perfected.
Another day, another podcast,
Yes, yes, yes. All right,
another
cool.
rabbit hole to go down.
So we're ready to play this one.
Multiple rabbit holes, but they all lead to the same
Well,
place.
let's intro up first, and then we'll rabbit hole it.
All right.
All right.
Boom.
How
Yeah.
y'all
Oh
how y'all
yeah.
doing?
Nice music. Okay. I thought you meant we are gonna cut it, have the intro music come in, and then we're back.
There's a new AI video generator called Runway. Katie's been looking at. It just came out, and apparently it's really good. They're Gen 3.
Dude, that's not
It's about
new.
to get wild, y'all.
That's not new. Maybe Gen 3 is
Even
new.
Gen 3,
even the
Gen 3.
Suno, I know we talked about this whatever 2, 3 weeks ago about Suno, how you can add the new clips.
Yeah,
Even just the general thing it's spitting out now it's so much more crispy or clean.
yeah.
It's like really, really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, man, enjoy your Cena while you have it because it's just about to go. Did
I
you
don't think
Yes.
see?
so.
Did you, dude, they've got a really compelling case, I think.
Who is coming after him? What tell us what's
Sony,
happening.
Universal Music Group,
But they're
Oh,
probably
coming
just
after.
settle. They're probably just gonna settle, and then they're gonna figure out a way that they can make money from what they're doing.
yeah, probably. But I
We'll
mean,
see. I don't know.
have you seen they have literal producer tags, like the actual producer tags, like you know, like a DJ Khaled, like we
Mhm.
the best. It
Yeah, yeah.
literally has that, like word for word, the exact intonation, all of that into, and then it's got like all the producers, every one of them, and so the argument
Like on the
is
back end, basically. So that's like what they're
like
programming it
if you,
with,
you can you
and we
can
can't.
you can make a song,
Uh-huh.
put trap as your uh music genre.
Yeah.
And then randomly, sometimes it will give you a song with that producer
Oh,
tag in
with
it.
the producer.
Yeah.
Damn.
But what they were showing was you could also
Like as a
uh
suggestion.
know like
But
it's
I don't
like
really
it's built
understand.
into the song.
it's in so like okay, you listen to a Justin Bieber song.
A tag means the thing they're saying, the actual audio sound,
Yes, 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 yes,
not
yes.
not a meta tag. Got it.
Right,
I
right, right.
misunderstood what you, I now I understand you.
Yeah, so the producer tag is
Like
like you
Cameron
turn on the
Cole.
song and like immediately it's like Metro Boomin wants some mo, like
So why would that happen if it wasn't obviously trained on copyrighted information?
exactly,
Because I don't think
exactly.
any. I feel like no one was trying to even hide the fact that it was trained on copyrighted information at this point.
No.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
we'll see. I
So,
mean, who knows what's going to happen? Yeah,
yeah.
Well,
But the music's really fucking good, so hey.
we've got
it's still
a
Pandora's box, so somebody will figure out some way to exploit it further after, even if those go away or something. So
Then you'll get that combined with the movie, the runway or whatever the latest and greatest one will be, and then you'll be able to be like literally
or
programming
let's
like a
say
movie
all of
to
this gets locked down and the average person like you and I can't use it, but the big companies can.
that's I think what's gonna happen.
Even if that's the case, it's still a whole other level of craziness that's about to happen. You know what I
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
mean? And
Oh
then there
yeah.
will be the underground stuff too.
Yeah. I think it'll be companies like Sony or Universal Music who will get full control of it, and they may release a version of theirs to the public, like you were saying before, where like, you can have the artist, the weekend or whatever, and you can
Yeah.
make a
You
song in
can
their
make,
style or
yeah,
whatever.
but they
But
own it.
they own it exactly, and so then you're paying them as opposed to paying some third party that they don't get
Right.
a cut of.
That's probably what'll happen, something like that.
Yeah.
What if somebody like inside like goes and just like open source like leaks the weights and everything for their algorithms?
It's just like the whole Sony catalog, the whole Universal Music Group catalog, everything.
Suddenly like North Korea's like Kim Jong Un praise worship music is like going to another level. It's like Britney Spears like singing how great Kim Jong Un is and stuff. This is what they all fear, by the way. This is what the tech people fear: is North Korea and China getting these weights so they
Literally,
can make pop music better than us.
all the Koreans are like, "Who is Britney Spears?" They've never been exposed to any music.
Or like they just take all of the popular music, like Michael Jackson, Britney Spears, the Beatles, everything, and they just make it sung like they somehow tweak it, so it's
Yeah,
like as if Kim Jong Un made it all.
yeah.
and they don't even know about AI over there, so they think he's just like suddenly this like music producing god,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oops, I did it again," but it's like their version of it, and so like they have all this.
You're like, wow, he's so good. Like, he's so poetic. How does he come up with this stuff? Amazing. Dude, all right. I am excited to get into it today. Like, I
There's
feel
so
like,
much.
yeah, there is so much. There's so much. So I had a video that I wanted to share. Should I share it with like the cool way or what?
Oh yeah, do it in the cool way so we can see Drake's face with it, as long as the sound comes through.
All right.
Oh shit, Drake's in the zone now.
Okay, here we go. So let's play this.
I once heard Virgil Walker and Willie Bauckham say of Marxists that they want God's stuff, they just don't want God. And of course, they know and I know that that's true of the overwhelming majority of the people on the planet. However, it's especially true when it comes to Marxists, who, dialectic materialists they are, wish to exploit other people and their beliefs and their cultures in the furthering of their own agenda.
Don't write off the minister. Don't write off the elected official. Don't write off anybody. Carry out a hegemonic campaign and then build people around your line, work with people all over the world, and overthrow the empire.
An interesting
pause it.
example of this is the atheist activist.
I
Okay,
thought that was a really good line, actually.
I just want to pause it for the algorithm for the copyright.
Yeah, no, that makes
And
sense.
Just pause every once in a while and say something,
Give some
and then
context here. Give some context here. What is
So,
what's
okay,
happening?
this was just something I was literally recommended this morning. And it said like Marxism and Christianity or whatever. And I was like, interesting. It's only 3 minutes. Let me hear what this guy has
like
to
right
say.
up my alley.
Yeah, and he's basically saying like, hey, because I think in the title it says like how Marxism appeals to nominal Christians, like Christians in name only, right?
Mhm.
And so he's basically making the case of like, hey, Christianity is not Marxism, and you shouldn't fall for it, right? And so
Like just
this guy,
because you're Christian and Jesus, like to help the poor, don't get fooled by the Marxists who don't even believe in Christianity, trying to get you to become Marxist by manipulating your faith.
right, right.
Mhm.
And so the guy who was just talking on the mic is obviously a Marxist, but I like the message that he's saying because he's saying, hey, don't just like write off the minister or whoever you're talking to, the politicians, the people in your like in your community. Don't just say, ah, they're never gonna get it. Like infiltrate them.
That's actually a
Like,
pretty cool point.
right? Right. And
And
that's
it's
how
kind
we
of what
get
I've been
into
trying to
it.
say. Just because they believe in this, this, and this, and this, like if you can get clear on what's going on in reality and relate it to them, they can see that point. Just because they don't really believe the shit they believe anyways.
Dude, okay, I think we should actually come back to this video. I think we should give some more context of some other of the videos that we've had throughout the week and then
Sure.
come back to this
I don't
video.
care.
Okay, cool. Because let's talk about that video that you had shared with the two guys on the couch. Um,
Okay.
they were doing the audition for the you know
Yeah. That's the big comfy couch.
the big the black couch is that
Oh, that one.
the casting
No.
couch.
That's this is
I definitely
also
missed that
Drake's
video.
algorithm. What do you mean? You didn't watch the 4 hour conversation between an atheist and a non-atheist talking, about
No, I'm working
Christianity
through that
for
post AI economic security, something like that. That one.
Oh, bro, that
That
was
one was the most where I was like, I need to watch this one.
that
Like
was so last week.
that was last week,
that
bro.
was last week. God dang. Hey, by the way, if you haven't been on the podcast in a little while, we have a playlist of all this stuff, right?
Right. Which I am going to refer
If you go on
to
the
right now.
if you go on the self-perfected channel, click the
Yeah.
playlist.
Is it
Yeah,
on there? Okay.
great.
So, okay, I'm going to the self-perfected channel right now just to look
If anyone
at the
doesn't know how to find the
playlist.
self-perfected channel, youtube.com/c/self-perfected.
Oh, okay,
Right?
thank you.
Is there a dash
Thank
in
you
there?
for that. I don't think so. No.
It's just, yeah, sometimes if you look it up, you get the videos and then you gotta find us. So
Uh, okay, here we go. View full playlist. Self-perfected reference video references. If you scroll down, there's one that's called. Oh, you didn't put it on there yet, Kim. It's not
which
on
one?
there.
Damn, leave the
The
people
the one
hanging.
with the
I kind of was.
You're just gonna have to reenact it, guys. Okay. So there's two
I'll do it
people on a
now.
black
I was kind of
couch
forgetting about it. Yeah, go ahead.
auditioning. This is
yeah.
what I'm
No, they're not
understanding. There's two.
actually
They're
auditioning.
not.
I'm just seeing
I was making
Oh,
it.
bummer.
A
But it's
reference
just
to
some
some
fucking
other
podcast.
thing.
There's just so we have a podcast about other people's podcast clips.
I mean, it's
Uh,
relevant. It's fucking
That's funny.
relevant.
Okay, here I'll just say this before we dive
Where
into
I
the
don't think
actual
I
thing.
sent. I don't see it on the actual text messages.
What?
It's like
Oh no, here it is. I found it. Never
here. I want to just give an example for people because
mind. Okay,
if
it should be on there now.
if someone's like listening to this, you're taking on the process and everything, and if you're not intentional, if you're not as intentional as you could be, you end up just like fucking yourself up because there's so much material to go through in terms of the current event stuff. You got this podcast, you got like equop, all these things you can listen to, and it's like I think a lot of people have this old pattern, like before actually taking their life on seriously, before taking process seriously, and like actually doing the thing, they used to use YouTube and learning as like entertainment and distraction only. And then when you get into this process, you start to realize, wait, it's actually important that I do study, a little bit every day or one day a week. I can like binge videos. And so it's this funny dichotomy because it's like sometimes you can actually learn from one of these videos some talking point that helps to actually progress what you're doing, your local community and all that. And you can also have no plan for it. And you could wake up in the morning and you start watching YouTube videos. And then you eat your breakfast and then you're doing this. And then all of a sudden you're watching YouTube videos again. And it becomes this whole like distractive point. And so I found though over time, um, you can get into a cool rhythm with it where like every day you are listening to the right thing. So you are up to date. And then you got material for your clubhouses, for all the stuff that you're doing. So it can be this like cool supportive point, but man, you can fuck yourself up quick with it, if you're not intentional. So
This one you were just referring to, Drake, about the
Uh,
two guys on the stage talking about. So do you want to intro that because I want to make a certain point about this real quick before we actually discuss any of the points about it.
yeah, go ahead.
Well, what can maybe give context?
So no, the context that I wanted to give was basically just this point of like they're having a discussion about the resurgence of Christianity, right? Or like there's this idea, and what was the talk called even? It was called "Is there a rebirth of belief in God?" is what the talk was called, right? And so it's just this question that they're asking this one guy who is clearly like a Christian, has his own platform where he does apologetics and use these logical arguments for Christianity, and he has a lot of anecdotal stories of people now coming into Christianity who were previously atheists and all of that. And it ties in really nicely with the last week that we just did, where we were looking at all this intelligent design stuff and looking at Richard Dawkins, the selfish gene and all this. And there's so many people who are now seeing that and going, oh, wow, actually, that makes a lot of sense. If you're not just like, like what Cam was saying earlier with the emotional bias of like, oh, I'm not even going to look at this. If you actually look at it, it's like, well, clearly there's something here because it doesn't make sense that this just randomly occurred, you know? And so a lot of people are having that realization along with having this realization of, hey, what's going on out in the world is not working. So one guy is making the commentary that like, hey, people are returning to Christianity, and the other guy is basically saying, yeah, but it's not about like having a belief in Jesus or God or anything. It's really more like a political movement. And it's really what we're seeing is people are saying, well, I don't want this. And you guys kind of share these values, and you already have like a system that has like this in place. Okay, I can be on board with that. Sure, I'll join this thing. Right. And he said kind of one of the big pieces that he brings up is how it's not just Christianity, because I guess they're in the UK, and he's saying like if it was just Christianity growing, I could say sure there's a rebirth in belief in Christianity, but he's like, but we're seeing that Islam is growing a lot faster in this country than Christianity is. So it's more a return to, if you could say it that way, conservative values rather than Christianity per se or Islam per se. It's those things kind of hold those conservative values. And then it's like, but they, it all comes with a religion. Okay, well, I get a community too. But it's really counter to the current culture that is mainstream right now. And that's what people are looking for. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, there was more that I wanted to say about that, but as an intro.
Yeah, we can keep going. Yeah. So I just wanted to make a couple points. One, I wanted to point out, like, you see how I'm just gonna speak for myself. I've been trying to show everybody, piece together, like, hey, do you see what's going on in the world? Do you see how people are starting to turn back to faith because there's all this chaos and they don't have answers or principles, and so they're like, well, let me go back here. And I thought that video was interesting because there's people who are seeing this very clearly too, and they can put all the points together, and we're just us. Like, we're not studying these things. We're not like that guy is like straight up, that's his whole life purpose, is to like talk about Christianity and everything. So it's in, but
And the other guy also studied theology. He got a degree in theology, and he's an atheist.
so the other point I was looking at too is because the atheist guy is kind of like, and you did a good job summarizing. He's like, it's not necessarily a return to Christianity, although I don't think that's what that guy was arguing necessarily, the other guy.
Mm.
But he was like, it's not even necessarily a return to God. It's like you said, it's kind of what we've been saying. It's people want an authority to exist so that they feel like something is taking responsibility at the highest level. And then I can align myself with that. And then somehow things will work out, and that gives my life purpose and meaning.
Yeah.
And that the atheist guy didn't frame it like that, but he was kind of like, essentially that's what he was saying. Like, they're not believing in the stuff
He was
that
saying
you're,
that. Yeah.
but they're accepting it because they really are looking for something else. And it's an interesting argument he's making, because the other guy wasn't, he was trying to say like, well, no, like you're kind of downplaying the fact that people really do actually believe it, you know. And he said, and he tried to use because they were arguing about this one person, Hersey Ali something. Do you remember the name?
Yeah.
I don't remember her name. I kind of know who they're referring to. I don't know much about her.
Yeah.
But I guess she recently converted to Christianity or something and was being public about it. And they were using her as an example. And the atheist guy was saying, well, when she talked about her conversion, spoke more about all the stuff going on with the left and wokeism and how she didn't like all that stuff. And then she turned to Christianity. And the other guy was like, well, you're downplaying the point that she said, I was a broken person. I didn't know how to move on with my life. And then I found Jesus and the gospel. And then I was able to accept grace and then, change and things like that. So they were both kind of arguing, no, it was a legitimate conversion. The other guy's like, no, it's kind of, she's just accepting it because she's looking for something outside of the woke stuff, right?
Either way, though,
Well,
like,
this is my point, though,
yeah.
is what the atheist guy didn't say, which is what I would have said, is even if the Christian person is correct and it was a legitimate conversion, it's still not real.
Mm.
Like, somehow, if the atheist guy admits, oh no, they were genuinely converting and believing in it, it's like somehow he's conceding something. So he wouldn't accept that. Like, oh no, like you're just kind of thinking that they're legitimately converting, but they're not legitimate. And I'm saying, even if they're legitimately, like, if you're like, oh, I'm so destitute and broken in my life, and this is why I'm turning to Jesus, how is that different than what we're saying, which is, I don't like the woke stuff. I don't like the stuff in the world. I'm just accepting the Jesus stuff because I want an answer to that. How is that fundamentally different?
Yeah.
You're doing literally, it's the same thing either way. It's just you're making it personal.
Yeah.
And you're saying, I don't know how to solve the problems within myself, so I'm accepting some authority of Jesus. And it's like, when I was looking into that, the guy even says like, well, you're broken and then you find the grace of God.
Right.
I'm like, where's the actual mechanism? Aren't you actually just accepting the grace of God? You're really just giving yourself permission to be like, all right, I can let go of all that being broken. Did it change anything? It's like, now you're a changed person. Are you actually? You're not actually changed. You're just not living in that moment with the guilt and the feelings of shame and embarrassment or negativity and so forth in that moment. And that's what you're calling grace. because you're like, oh, even despite all these flaws, God still loves me. Like I'm not doomed. I'm not unforgivable. And it's like, but you didn't change anything fundamentally. Now suddenly you're just not participating in the wokeism anymore or the whatever thing that you think is bad, but you're just going to the other polarity. You haven't changed anything in the world or yourself.
And you know what it is? It's like you have permission to kind of stand up against that thing now because you're backed by a religion.
Oh, you're like, you can't use my flaws against me
Yeah,
because now I am holier than thou.
yeah.
Now I am morally superior. This is the
Yeah.
point Katie's been making when we talk about like the real points about this Christianity stuff. It's like, now God has forgiven me. I am on the right side. I am on the side of truth because I accepted God. And it's like, that doesn't actually give you any authority.
Yeah, but it's kind of what we were talking about via text yesterday when we were talking about like, okay, Mitch and I had brought this up as well in the self-perfected hangout where we were just talking about and after the hangout we were talking about like fears and people were bringing up like their fears and there's so many people that have just like I mean you look at all the fears, none of them are unique. Everyone has that fear or has had that fear, you know. And one of the fears that we were looking at was like a fear of speaking up or speaking out, right? And someone was just bringing up the point of like, well, actually, a few people were bringing up this point of like, well, what if I say the wrong thing, right? And you can look at this person who has just recently converted, right? And they want to speak their like what they're seeing, but they're afraid of being attacked perhaps or like I don't have the authority to say this thing, right? And you know what we were saying was just basically like, well, okay, but you can forgive yourself because we talk about self-forgiveness all the time here in this group, right? And there's like this misunderstanding of self-forgiveness because what you had said, and I don't remember what it was in reference to. Do you remember what it was in reference to when you were saying like um, that these people who are converting, oh, that's what it was. These people who are converting are just doing self-forgiveness in a self-dishonest way,
They don't
right?
realize it. They're saying God's forgiving them, but
Right.
actually they're just actually like in reality, they're forgiving themselves.
Right. But they don't believe that they can forgive themselves. They don't believe that they have the authority to forgive themselves, that they're even capable
Yeah,
of that.
or they've never even considered it.
Well, that
Like
too,
some people are really, really dumb.
but
Like they've never even thought that.
yeah, I agree with that. But I think even you consider, okay, I can forgive myself, but like me just saying these words, does that mean that it's
Right.
done? It's
And
over?
think
Like,
too, like how we most I don't know if it's most people nowadays, but I would imagine the vast majority of people have not understood the actual power of their own word because they've been programmed with the world where it's like, oh yeah, I'll be there tomorrow. And then the person will ghost. Or it's
sure,
like people's word doesn't mean anything. So now you're
sure.
like, hey, you can forgive yourself. Like, yeah, but I don't trust any other time I
Yeah,
say
like
stuff,
my
it's
words are
bullshitting
totally
myself.
inconsequential. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right. As opposed to realizing, no, you are a creator and your words do have consequence.
And
Right.
and there's also this point of like the power of belief. Like there is power in belief. That
Yes.
doesn't mean I'm promoting belief. It's just like it is a powerful tool, just like lying is.
Yeah.
It is a powerful tool if you know how to do it. Like you can manipulate people. I mean, look at the fucking world that we live in. Like it's
Yeah.
pretty obvious. That doesn't mean that if there's no consequences. So the problem is, yes, you can ask for God's you can ask for God's forgiveness. You can experience relief from that because you are through a belief point creating an experience in yourself of letting go of this stuff, even though you're
Yeah.
not being honest with yourself that it's you're the one doing it. You are accessing a technology, let's say, and then but there is a consequence for that.
Yeah.
There's a
So
price to pay, like in the same sense that like as a Christian, when someone does a satanic ritual and they get some benefit from it, there's a price to pay. God, Satan's going to come and take their soul later or whatever. Like there's it's a debt you're creating, right?
yeah.
Because you don't realize like you're just using this temporary energetic point and you're putting it outside of yourself, and there has to be like a rebalancing of that.
So I want to bring in this other point of that David Paresh or however you say his name that he had sent the guy who was talking about meditation. He like that video was
Oh,
really good as well. I really enjoyed
I
that.
didn't really listen to. I only listened to like the first few minutes of it because a lot of times, like I hear the first thing and I'm like, "Yep, that's the point," right? But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
was this the guy who was talking about the hell stuff,
Yeah, yeah,
or is this
yeah.
something?
Like that
Okay,
we're born in hell. We're born in
I
hell.
saw I saw on his channel he had stuff about meditation. I didn't know what it talked about beyond that.
So yeah, I mean, literally just the first few minutes are like the first 5 minutes is good, but then afterwards he continues on. He's really just selling his like to do meditation, but he
Okay,
does a really good job of laying out not just the point of, hey, we're born into hell. I really like that take, of like, okay, you're taught that, if you don't behave, you're gonna go to hell. You're already in hell. Like and
and I
he
like the way he
continues.
said it too. Something like if you're like born as the average person,
Yeah.
like, and then he really kind of, yeah.
And then he explains these points of like, what is the average person going through?
Do you want to just
You're,
play that part, that
yeah,
first
yeah,
little
yeah, for
bit? Yeah.
sure. For sure.
I think if we just do little bits of things, it's hard when you have a very long, like 3 hour video to do that because we don't timestamp the things we want to talk about. But these little short ones, I think we could do it a little bit.
Yeah. Hang on.
But I like that was
Yeah,
what attracted me to the point in the first place when I saw the title. Again, that was just a recommended video. It wasn't like I was searching for that. So I
yeah,
get all these weird random things.
I found it. But he's basically saying like you have to have understanding in order to like push through everything. But hang on, let me see.
Okay.
I'm just finding the part.
You could probably just start at the beginning and then skip forward as it makes sense. I don't know. You can do it.
Okay, here. I'll just start from where I'm at right now.
That you can't do it, right? So that's why people can't act in their own best interest, because if it's too difficult, if it appears to be difficult, if it requires more than you're willing to put into it, if your thoughts are different about it than the way it is, or if you just don't feel like it, you won't do it. And so in meditation, you won't establish a meditation practice unless you develop an understanding that allows you to appreciate the fact that if you don't do this, you're going to pay a very high price. There is a consequence.
He's talking about
to
destiny
living a
process,
life
right?
that is in the dark.
Yeah,
There is a
right?
consequence to living a life that is given to you by your conditioning, the conditioning that's been passed down from generation to generation. And the success of that conditioning, the success of the understanding that humanity has, can be easily recognized by watching the news or by looking at the reality of your own life. Because if your life is a typical life, you're struggling to make your relationships work, you're afraid of death, you're afraid of not having enough money, you're struggling to get along with your own body, you wake up in the morning in a condition of dread. And this is the typical life that human beings are experiencing. And the reason that that's the case is because you were born into a world that was already going, and the way the world was going could be accurately described as a hell realm. You were born in hell. People think that hell is where you go when you die. Well, they say that heaven on earth, the teachings say that heaven and hell both exist together on earth. Whether you're experiencing one or the other depends on your consciousness, depends on how.
So obviously that's a stupid take, right? Like whether you're experiencing one or the other depends on your consciousness.
But that's the problem with the lie of meditation. It's like, oh, I can escape it and get to heaven. And that's not the reality of it. Now, would you just go now to the guy sitting in his car?
Okay.
Because I want to give people, because it's like, well, people don't have bad lives. And it's like, this is just a normal dude with a job. And I can show you 1,000 videos exactly like this.
Yeah.
Oh, we can't hear it.
Can't hear it.
What? Let's hear it. It says it's. Let me just turn it up.
No,
Can you hear
can't.
now? No?
No, you probably have to reshare.
All right. Try this shit again.
Anyways, I'm at work today in the parking lot. This is the work simulation program. For those of you who are retired or prima donnas in preschool or something, and you don't have to work yet. This is what it's like. You wake up out of your bed, you roll out of your bed. Some of you may take a shower, eat breakfast, put on your shoes, get your bag or your lunch, and go to work, go to school, rinse and repeat. You have to be doing that the vast majority of your life. And each step of the way, it's very painful to get out of your bed in the morning. Or for me, late at night. Doesn't matter. doesn't matter how much money you spend or how much money you have. It's the human experience. It's equal. It's equality. There's pain and suffering for everyone. There's your equality. And you know what? Everyone says money this, money that. All I did was buy a $1.19 coffee from McDonald's, small. I figured that I don't need the large anymore and that I should just go with the small because it's $1. So after a bi-weekly paycheck, I'd be paying about $15 after taxes as opposed to 20 some dollars. Save $5. Save $5 or $10.
Dude, he's talking about saving $5. Like,
What does he do? What is
I
does he
don't
go
know. He's
into
like,
that?
he
Something
looks
with
like
radiology, I see. So
some sort of, yeah, nurse or something. But maybe
He's
one day
running.
I'll be able to reach $1 American, $1 American for doing this for a living. That is being a YouTuber.
Show that comment that I was.
Okay, yeah. I
Wow,
think
he's got a lot of comments on here.
sort by newest.
Well, no, you could just show that screenshot. Maybe I don't know.
Here, right here.
Oh no, not mine. I meant
Uh,
the one that I sent.
I don't think it was on this video. The
Oh, it
one that you
wasn't. Oh
sent.
my bad.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's a
sorry.
big thing too. It's like don't underestimate the power of leaving a comment or giving a shout out to the group because like that's literally how we found some of the core people in our group was
Oh,
me just
okay.
dropping self-perfected, like giving real not just like hey join this fucking group, but like hey like here's the point. If you're looking for a solution, check this group out for real. You know, that's how we found Chantel.
There
The
was one on there. Oh, the reason why I left that comment was because it may, and the one that I saw may not be there anymore. I don't know, but it was like, just save up your money, get a little bit of land, get some cows, chickens, pigs, dog, go out, get out of the system,
yeah.
right? And I was talking to Max about that because he was like, "What are you doing?" Because I was looking at this, and I was like, "Here's the comment I put," and I was like, "People are just saying such bullshit, right?" And I was like, "Oh," and then also in that comment it said, "Save up your money, get some land, get those animals. With Jesus, all things are possible. Da da da. Get out of the system."
Mhm.
And then somebody commented as a reply, like, "Where? What state? Like, where would I do this at? Like, what are you talking
Yeah,
about?" So that's
yeah.
why I put my comment because it's like, hey, I was talking to Max. I'm like, hey, think about like having all the animals and stuff. I'm like, what do you have? What do you need to have to drive your tractor? And Max was like, fuel. And I'm like, how do you get that? He goes, money. And I'm like, so what's this idea? You could just save up some money and then
Right.
go and do all this. Like, no people, because the person who said that is either just being dishonest or they don't fucking know, and they're probably
Right.
not, and they're not doing it. They're not
Right.
definitely not. I saved up some money, and then I'm gonna quit my job, and then I'm just gonna go live. And it's like that's not how it fucking works, dude. Like you'll run
Yeah.
out of fuel very quickly.
Yeah.
So it's just total
Dude, it's
fucking
like a
retarded.
lot of fucking broken brick walls of people. Like, there's a really cool share. I think it was on the Thursday call. One of the members in the group, she can share the story herself whenever she wants to. But that one word she had, right, that was like so supercharged within her. Like even one little subtle word, right, in her life,
Oh
and it's
yeah.
like, and that's someone who's been doing this for a while. She could see that how wow, you can still have these like missing pieces of your understanding now you think of this random dude on YouTube, leaving a comment is like, oh yeah, wow, we got a lot of educating of people to do.
Right. And what they're
Yeah.
doing is leading people astray because they should
Yeah.
actually face the reality. It's like, oh, I'll just escape. That's no different than putting hope. Actually, maybe you want to show the comment I put because I don't remember what exactly I said, but there was a point in there.
I I don't know if I still have that comment. We'll find it. We'll find it. It was easy to find the first time.
It should be on new.
Top
It was
top
on, it was
unvoted
on new
comment.
when you did it.
Is it not on there now? No.
I don't know.
There we go.
It was,
All right,
there
there.
you go. All right, I saw it. Read more. We're all going through this in one form or another until we give up hope of any savior and learn how to change ourselves, stand up, create a system that's best for all. It only gets worse on earth. We cannot go into a form of hope looking for a savior or participate in any form of blame. Right. And this was the point I wanted to get at. It was just like everything is either blame or just looking for a savior. So like, oh, we just get out of the system. That's just like looking for a savior. Like if I do that, somehow my life will be better.
Yeah.
It's basically he's just telling this guy, hey, in this moment where you're realizing, like, look at that guy, stay strong, my boy. It can't rain forever.
Give him a thumbs
Right?
up. Give him a thumbs up, Drake. +1 for
What else?
for equality. No, not that guy. Cameron's. Give a downvote to the other guy.
Scroll down.
Downvote.
Is there? Look, let's just
Downvote
look at the
everyone else.
comments real quick. Let's just look at the comments.
Yeah.
Who's sad but
Look. Okay.
adorable?
Look. Optimal. There's hope.
Yeah.
Let's
You
go
are
up a little bit. I
living
can't see it.
2025.
But your eyes have to land on it. There's much more to this world than the shitty side, and it's absolutely in your power to see it. That was what the meditation guy was saying.
Exactly.
You are choosing to see it the way you do. Okay, would that apply to a child being raped?
Uh,
It's like, well,
no,
that's a different
obviously.
situation. It's like that's still just if that person was complaining on YouTube, hey, I'm 12 years old, I just got raped by my uncle. Would you put the same comment?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Like, how is that different than what this guy's going through? So, well, he's an adult and he can take responsibility. And it's like, okay,
Not
let's
that
go
bad
back
for
now.
him.
You can stop the share if you like, but go back to what that guy was saying. No, you were born into conditions. You didn't in this life create.
Yeah.
It is hell. And the whole point when you study destiny, what Bernard's trying to explain is, guys, like, we're in hell and we're making hell worse. We're
Yeah.
not even trying to get out of hell. We're not even trying to change hell into what it could be, which is heaven. You can't have both. This guy's like, you can have heaven and hell at the same time. No, you can't. How can you have heaven and hell? How can you be sitting here in heaven
Yeah.
while there's children suffering?
Right.
How is that heaven?
Right.
So, well, because it's in your mind. It's like, right, that's just total fucking self-interest delusion.
Yeah. It's a really great point, though. I really like that he said, like, okay, we're born into hell. Because think about the point of what everyone's taught is hell is a place that you go to when you die, right? It's like, so then you don't have to do anything now. You don't have to worry about it now. You can just accept this, right? And it's like always this point of like, there's something worse than this. So this is okay. This is fine. I don't have to change this, actually, right?
That's a good point. It could be worse. And if I believe, it'll be better.
It's the same point with Hitler, really. You consider it. It's like you've heard this trope of like Hitler could be he could have repented of his sins, like okay, let's say you're in the typical system, because I heard this a lot growing up. I heard this a lot. Like you hear that Hitler's like the worst person on planet Earth, period. Yeah, and you believe that. Okay. But then you also hear, if you're like in Christianity, that perhaps Hitler repented and he asked God for forgiveness and accepted Jesus
Like he
into
could
his
have.
heart. He could have, yeah. And then he could be in heaven too, like because
like according to their rules, that is a possibility.
The point that they're trying to make when they say that usually is that God can forgive anyone, right? And so you if you actually consider that, you hear that, what it creates in your mind is like, oh, I'm not that bad. So if he can go to heaven, I can go to heaven.
Maybe some kind of Christians though would be like, no, there's certain sins you can do you can't be forgiven for.
Maybe. I don't
they're
know.
just arbitrarily fucking guessing at rules, meanwhile just letting hell get worse.
But I was just gonna say, because that may be an objection, but even if that's the case, then no one's going to heaven.
Right.
Because we're all accepting and allowing a like if killing people, even if you just say, well, it has to be like mass murder of 6 million people or something at a minimum. Okay, but how many people are dying because of the way the money system is functioning? And you're participating in it and accepting and allowing it to continue and making excuses about it. Therefore, you are guilty. So yeah, you didn't do some Holocaust thing, but you're literally still responsible for people dying. Like you're participating in a system that's creating war right now in Israel and in Ukraine and other places too.
Yeah.
So you're responsible. So there's no way you can be forgiven for that. So if Hitler can't be forgiven by God, then you can't be forgiven either. So you can't have it both ways.
Right. And so I just wanted to bring that in because it's like, again, looking at this point of, all right, so it's not so bad. So I can accept this. I can accept myself just being the way that I am. And when I do need forgiveness, I've created this entity, this character who has more power because I believe in that thing. Then I can put my faith in that thing to then forgive me. So then I can feel the relief. But all I'm looking for actually is that relief. And so when there's something that's like not working out, I can just blame it actually on that entity that I created called God. And I could just say, well, it's God's fault that But I wouldn't say it that way. I would just say God has a plan. And
Here's what it is. Okay, let's go back. So you're in that state. You want the feeling of forgiveness, etc. So you ask God because you've created that entity, like you said, right?
Mhm.
But then because you've created it as something outside of you, your forgiveness that you receive isn't dependent on you.
Right.
Like, in other words, I'm trying to think of how to explain it. It's like, because it's not dependent upon you, you can go back and do whatever else you want.
Yeah.
And you you're not you're not ultimately culpable. In other
Me-
words, okay, if the forgiveness depended on you, then the problem is you're like, but then I have to live perfectly, otherwise the forgiveness won't be valid. The only way that forgiveness can have power is if it's coming from something that's not me, because I'm not willing to live in a way that would represent that kind of authority and power. So you
Dude.
have to project it outside of yourself. But then the problem is the only benefit you actually receive in reality, whether you're willing to admit it or not, is a feeling of relief of guilt. You don't
Yes.
actually direct the situation so that you prevent that shit.
And it also creates like you're creating an energy debt, right? Where it's
Yeah,
like where you're just going in this cycle of
you're
like
making a deal with
I
the literal
feel
devil.
this, yeah, I feel this great thing, and then you're like, ah, but then I went and continued living my life like normal, and now I feel guilty again, so that I can go have this experience again
That's
where
what
I
I'm
can feel
saying.
this relief, and you know, it's kind of like, so you know how we make key lime pie and stuff, right? So part of the recipe for key lime pie is you have to zest the limes, right? And every once in a while, like we'll forget to zest the limes and they're already cut. And once you've already cut, you know, a lime and juiced it and all this, it's really difficult to fucking zest it, right?
Okay.
But if you have extra limes lying around, you
You can
can
do
zest
that. Yeah.
those.
Yeah.
But then what happens the next time you go to use those limes to make a key lime pie, you can't zest those anymore, right?
Sure.
It's you create this like I call it a zest debt, right? But it's like you're basically constantly in debt doing that to yourself where you're like, okay, now I have to go, well, I already used these limes, I can't zest them anymore. So I can squeeze them, I can get the juice out of them, but now I have to go buy new limes in order to zest those, and you're caught in a cycle.
The problem is you gave yourself a way out that didn't change the situation.
Right.
If you had just gone that one time and got more limes,
Yeah.
you could have
Yeah.
prevented this situation in the future, right? But
Right.
instead, you're getting God to forgive you, so you feel the relief of the guilt, and then therefore you don't have any reason to go change the system, because the thing that was causing your suffering, you were able to project that something could relieve it. Now I don't need. This is why we say don't do drugs, don't drink alcohol, don't do porn. Maybe there's other things too that we suggest, because you're borrowing against the future. You're borrowing in a
You
way
say
where you
don't
can't pay it
do
back.
porn?
Don't be in a porno. Yeah.
Okay,
Such a
keep
good point.
going.
Such a good
I
point.
figured it out.
You could do porn, just do it with your wife or husband or whatever, and keep it to yourself.
Okay, Christine, we're
Not sure if even that would be best or not, but you could figure that out for yourself. I don't have to give you the answer for everything. Damn.
yeah, yeah, no. There's just so much this week. There's so much. Can we keep going?
Yeah.
I got more stuff. I got more. So, there's that, which I think tied in nicely with just this point of, okay, so let's say, for instance, this is the point that I actually wanted to make. You're born into hell. You're taught that it can get worse than this. And that's when you die, though. So you don't have to do anything about this. This is fine. The worst person is actually going to heaven too, so that's fine. So it's like you don't actually have to change.
Yeah.
And
What
then
what does it matter what you do here, really?
exactly, exactly. Um, and on top of all of that, then you realize actually what this other guy was saying, where you're like, okay, but I'm not happy. I don't enjoy this. I'm born into a system that doesn't fucking work. And so you're looking for an outlet. And so then that outlet is, oh, I can just turn to meditation. I can just turn to religion. I can just turn to whatever. And it really becomes this thing like what we were just saying, as far as, you're relieving the feeling in the moment, but you're not actually changing, which means it means when you come back to this existence, let's say you do, if you do come back, when you come back, it's the same fucking mess that you left. You didn't change anything.
You didn't learn the lesson.
Like actually consider you die and you come right back into the same existence because the whole purpose of you being here was to change and you didn't fucking do that.
So imagine the point where you're like that guy was saying with the hell stuff, being born into hell. There's an assumption that you're totally innocent and then you're born here and then like, well, it's just what it is. Like I'm getting fucked by the system, but it's not my fault per se. So I just have to meditate out of it or whatever.
Yeah.
But then you have the reaction, because that's kind of a reaction to the Christianity point, which is like you're born into sin. They're more right. It's just it's like they're admitting, yeah, you're born into a fucked situation, but then they're like, but there's no way out.
Yeah.
You have to just submit to God to get out of it. And it's like, no, that idea is why we're in the situation we're in, because everyone was looking for a God and no one wanted to take full self responsibility for themselves. So that little piece inside of you is like a little radio broadcasting a signal. Your job is to figure out, I mean, I'm not saying totally on your own, like there's a way to do it. It's just ultimately your job is to figure out how to turn that radio off and stop broadcasting that signal. But you're thinking, no, I just got to like put headphones on that cancel the noise.
Yeah.
But you don't realize that if that radio keeps broadcasting, it's still creating all these problems that's going on. And so you have to turn yours off. You have to stop it. That's really the point. And so all of these solutions, that's not meditation. Meditation is putting on the noise canceling headphones.
Right.
Asking forgiveness from God. I mean, I know it's an analogy, but asking for forgiveness from God, believing in God, being an atheist, just going for worldly pleasures, like just chasing money, whatever, like just trying to be happy. All of those things are literally, you're just putting on the noise canceling headphones because you're not understanding. No, you're the one the reason I use the radio example is because like, it's like you're broadcasting the thing that's creating everything.
And it's like, no matter what
person.
you're broadcasting. And so you should broadcast what's
best. And
best.
even if you came into this world for whatever reason, you're some super advanced being from another dimension that didn't create any of this, then you're here to be like a super soldier to change it. You know what I mean? To be like one of the people who's like, all right, guys, I'm not guilty like you idiots who created this shit, but therefore I can really stand more stable and clear and like lead all of you and support you to like not like, let's just say Jesus was totally like pure and like he wasn't one of us, but what was he doing actually? He's like, hey, wake the fuck up.
Yeah.
And what did we do? We're like, oh, thank you, God. Thank you for blessing me with your blessings.
Thanks,
and I worship you.
All right,
and
I can never be like you.
The fuck?
I was talking with someone yesterday about because you listen to like the Hitler speeches and all that, and it's like looking at what was going on, like what was at that point? Actually, we talked about this, Kim, of like Candace Owens having some conversation where she was saying about how when the Nazi party was burning books, like one of the first books that they were burning was by this guy who I guess it was like pornographic, or it was like some psychiatrist, and had some weird fetish stuff in there.
Yeah,
right?
I don't know the details of it, but yeah.
Right. And she was getting flack for that, but beside the point.
She was getting flack because he was Jewish and she was saying this Jewish guy or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's not the point you're making?
Yeah, no, that's not the point that I'm making. But the point that I'm making is that we watched these, we searched through some other history where it's like, yeah, that was actually a big problem. Like Berlin was like this crazy, free sex, whatever place where there was a lot of prostitution, a lot of shit going on. And that was all corrected when Hitler got into power, or at least it was like, no, we're not doing that anymore. And
I mean, he literally came to power and became like a fucking police state dictator.
Exactly.
Like,
and that's the point that I was making. Is like he was
anybody who's like, I like Hitler. It's like, do you really want to live in a fucking police state where you have no
Right.
free speech? Really?
Right. And so I was making that point of like he was a dictator. Like you could say, oh, that thing that they did was cool and whatever, but he's still a dictator. And the point that I'm making with that is you could say that the entire population maybe wanted, because it wasn't just him saying burn the books and then everybody's like, oh, we just listened to him. It's like there were a whole bunch of people who were like giddy to burn these books to get rid of this stuff going on. And the
he
point
wouldn't have had
is,
power if people didn't agree in some fundamental way with what he
right.
was. Yeah.
And so that's the point. It's like, okay, so either all these people did not know this was going on and they were just like, oh, and we just listen to whoever's in power and we just do what they say. Or they did know what was going on, but they didn't want to take responsibility for it. And then the moment that somebody comes in who says, listen, I will take the flak for it. I'm going to take the responsibility. I'm the one telling you, let's do this. They're like, yeah, we can finally do it. It's like the problem with the dictatorship, even if it's a dictatorship that is quote unquote doing all the things that you think would be best, right? Or would be best for society. The problem is that you're not taking responsibility as an individual. That's the major problem there. And so even if you're like, well, I really do wish that, we could get rid of all this, the Pride Month and the trans stuff and like whatever it is, right? Even if you do want to see that happen and somebody comes into power and they do that, and like as a dictator, it's like, well, why didn't you take responsibility where you could? Why didn't you like go talk to people? Like, oh, but I'm afraid to talk to people. Oh, I don't talk to people. It's like that's the problem. That allows for all this bullshit to happen because not
Right.
every
And then
individual
when
is
you
actually
give
taking
someone all that
responsibility.
power, they might do some of the things you like, but they might do some of the things you don't like because
Right.
they're an individual person and they're just willing to stand in that higher
And what
position of
happens when that person
responsibility.
dies? And then somebody else comes into power. You know?
And then you've accepted that someone can be a dictator. And now
Exactly.
the other side that you don't like suddenly gets to be the dictator, right?
Exactly. And so I there's more. There's more. I just wanted to bring these points in. I'm gonna go back to sharing the first video. I think there's been enough time since since we shared the first bit, right?
Who berate Christians who aren't socialists, who aren't Marxists. They say things like, look, Jesus would be a socialist, or, read the Bible. It tells you not to hoard wealth and it tells you to take care of the poor. These are examples of why you should join my cause. What they're doing in a manipulative way is appealing to a faith that they do not believe in order to exploit biblically illiterate Christians in order to join a cause that is actually hostile to the Christian faith. As Christians, we believe that all good things come from God, including the mind, the limbs, and the willpower that one must use in order to go out and earn those things. You see, because we believe that if a man does not work, he shall not eat. And so when we earn those things for ourselves and we thank God for them, it is wrong for the atheists and the activists to then come along armed with the government and force us to share those items amongst the community. As Christians, we believe in charitable giving, and we do a great deal of it, but we do so out of our own convictions, not because some activist or politician is trying to force us to do it. What gets me is that Bible-believing evangelicals make up a significant portion of the...
I don't know. I think that's just the main point there of what you're saying, right? Like it's like, okay, yeah, we believe that, we should give, but it should be out of the charity of our own heart, not because we're forced to give. And I get the point of like not being forced, but the point of like it's out of charity. It's like, oh no, well we're doing things because we work for it. Like you were making a really great point earlier when, when I was just first showing you this, Kim, of like, okay, so the guy who is a veteran who's been shell shocked, who like he literally went out and fought for the protection of the country. Let's just say it that way. Let's say that he's fighting for a legitimate cause or whatever. Like he comes home and he's homeless. He shouldn't be taken care of, or it should only be based on your charity. Like
Like we shouldn't have a system in place that makes sure like everybody who can't provide for themselves for some reason gets provided for. Like, okay, why couldn't we then, as Christians, just agree to have that system?
Yeah.
It's like, well, but then it would be forced. Okay, so whether the most unfortunate people in our world have enough every day has to be based on the individual, hopefully, choice of each person who has every day. Like, we can't systematize it, because if you systematize it, then there's an expectation, which would mean you have to have some kind of force to enforce it. So it has to be every day. Enough Christians get up every day and go, hey, I need to do some charity today to make sure that everybody is fed. But how is that cool? So you as an individual Christian can't take care of all the poor people. You can only take care of a few. So isn't that a pretty shitty system? Like, isn't that like probably people are going to go without, and you're okay with that because
they don't get
that's less
they think they're
that's less important than you being forced to do it. Being forced to do it is a worse evil than children or homeless people or whoever going without. That is a worse evil, you being forced. While you also say that there's a supreme being that created everything and he deserves our worship and praise.
I don't think they give a shit. I think they're just like, oh great, I gotta get out of jail free card. I'm going to heaven at some point. I'm good. Let me just pretend I'm fucking
figured out how to make money in the system. I'm gonna keep doing it.
My money.
Can't take
I'm good.
it.
Right. Because it's like the Christian who has the money behind them, right? Because they use the church as well as the network, right? It's like they have that safety net, quote unquote. And so it's just like, I'm good enough. Don't fuck with it, and we'll be all right. And I'll pretend like I care.
I agree. I don't also want the government to come and force everybody to be poor and take all your shit. But you're enabling that to happen because you're allowing poor people to exist. And then you're for allowing the Marxists to have ammo to be able to manipulate people to create the thing that you fear happening instead of you just being like, let's just actually solve the fucking problem.
Right. Also,
bingo.
The other way is like
That's
based
it.
on
Right there.
it's based on just how you feel in the moment. And the other guy, this is why I was bringing in the David Paresh guy. What he was saying, the meditation guy, was he was saying is like, yeah, if you don't understand why you're doing it, you're gonna stop doing it. You know, like if you don't understand why this is important, and
This is
it's
the
just
point
based
of
on how you
discipline
feel.
versus self-mastery.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. It's like it just makes no sense to have these arguments of like, well, if you don't work, you don't get any. Like, well, do you say that to your kids? Like,
Well, at a certain point, they have to go and survive in the system. And it's like, well, when you face the reality that most of the Gen Z people can't get real jobs and they're struggling, you're just going to watch them struggle. And then you're going to be like, you're just not working hard enough.
Right. Like,
like did you ever sit down for a moment? Okay. It's a lot like you're playing Monopoly and then somebody loses and you go, you just didn't play well enough.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's say everyone plays really well. Is someone still going to lose?
They have to.
But is there a belief that if everyone works really hard and does all the right things, that everyone will have more and everyone will have enough? Because that guy sitting in his car complaining is like, I fucking hate my life.
Yeah.
And he works really hard. Clearly, he's sitting in his car he has to wake up at night to go to work.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, well, he just doesn't have the peace of Jesus. Why is Jesus necessary in the equation?
Mm-hmm.
If you're already doing the things of working hard and doing all this stuff, okay, so there's actually nothing shitty about the situation. It's actually you just haven't accepted Jesus and therefore got this peace.
Yeah. Yeah, really. Like you're supposed to be at peace with like hell.
So is anything wrong with what Joe Biden's doing?
Right.
Because it's like, what are you saying? Like, just go to work and work hard and do what you're doing. Don't. So, okay, but is there anyone doing anything wrong? Yeah, those people are doing something wrong. Well, but that guy says he believes in Jesus. Well, he doesn't actually. How do you fucking know?
Right.
Because I could say you don't actually believe in Jesus based on what you're doing.
Right. Yeah.
You don't know what's in their heart. Like, it's just so retarded. So you do want to change some things.
Yeah.
But in the reality of it is they just want the system a certain way because they figured out how to be at some level of benefit from it. And they're really just brainwashed. That's really all it is.
Right. And the reality of it is they just haven't found us yet. And so it's like it's on us to get out there in front of the people because they're programmed for that. They're programmed to keep perpetuating that. And at the end of the day, is really on us as individuals in this group to take that leadership, the self-leadership. Literally no one else is going to go do it for us.
Yeah. It's so funny. I'm just reading the comments, right? Katie said, didn't God choose Joe Biden to be president? Like, like
it's such like a double standard. Like I'm sure there's proper words for this, but yeah, it's like this weird fucking double standard thing people have.
He's saying all things. He said all things that are good come from God.
right. So what did
God works in mysterious ways.
He didn't
though,
say
Kevin.
all things come from God.
Yeah.
So God is not the creator of all things.
Yeah.
So we as humans do create things. So that's a cool admission. Now, how do you determine whether it's good or not?
Yeah. What is good? Yeah.
Because what if the person says, "I believe in God, and God told me to do this, and it's in part of God's plan"? How do you criticize that? Because if you can, then how come I can't level the same criticism on you? You could say, "Well, no, I know my heart and so forth." How can the other person not say that? What do you use as the actual measuring stick? Because also the idea that it's like, oh, Christians, don't be fooled by these Marxists trying to manipulate you with Christianity and so forth. There's also, okay, the fact that a Christian could be manipulated by it. So they believe in Jesus, but the Marxist who doesn't is manipulating them with it. Doesn't that tell you it's not explicitly clear in the Bible? Because he's trying to help you rationalize why it's okay to be like a capitalist or whatever and not a Marxist.
Yeah.
But where in the Bible does it actually explicitly say? Because he's like, yeah, I know it says it's not good to hoard wealth, but actually it's okay. So you're contradicting the Bible, or you just found a way to, well, actually, if you take this other version, you combine it with this one, like it's some kind of fucking algebra equation or something. And it's like, yeah, but somebody else combined it and they got a different answer. And how do you know their answer is wrong? How many different denominations are there of Christianity?
Right.
And what is the purpose of that equation? Like, is it just
also,
so you can fucking get lucky and get to heaven? Or is this so you can actually
how do you
create heaven for
know?
everyone?
Didn't the Mormons have another Bible as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
How do you know that one's wrong?
Definitely feel weird about it, man. That's why it's wrong.
Like, okay, you might like, okay, but just for a moment, just play with me, guys. Like, how do they know it's wrong? Like, what would a Christian say? Like, who's like not the Mormon Christian? What would they say? How do they know?
Well, because Christianity was like from thousands of years ago, and like it was just
just one guy who apparently had some revelation or something.
No, it was already set in stone basically back then, and so it was just some guy who came later who just like it's probably delusional, wanted to start his own thing, and so
okay, cool.
Yeah.
That's how the Jews probably feel about Christians.
Yeah, but they're a much smaller group, the Jews.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying though?
Yeah.
You can use logic to justify anything that you already believe, but it doesn't make any sense. And because see, the problem that the Christians will have to face, because there are some cool points within Christianity. There's a lot of really cool points, except for the whole believe in a savior. So like the whole thing. There's a lot of really cool details, right? That are.
I'll say this actually, because I was having a conversation with this pastor, and he was saying that, the people from his congregation during this whole time when, they were banning like Bibles in schools and banning prayer in school and stuff like that, people were coming to him and saying like, oh, this is just so terrible. We got to do something about this, because he's the pastor of the church. And they were like, they won't let my kid bring a Bible to school. And it's like, why do you care? Like literally, why
do you
this is the
bring a
pastor
Bible to
saying this.
school?
It's like, why do you care that they're banning the Bible in school? Like your kid doesn't even read the Bible. like you don't even read the Bible. You don't
Good
even
point.
know, you're not living it, is what he was basically saying.
It's like, the moral superiority.
Yeah, it's like, but it's the exact fucking thing if you think about it, if you consider it. Like, there's all these stories of like Jesus and the Pharisees or whatever, and the Pharisees like would pray out loud, and like he's like, don't be like the Pharisees who make a whole show of this prayer and all this bullshit, but they don't actually live it. They don't actually like it's not in their heart, is what he said.
Wow.
And so it's like, wow, you don't even realize that that's what you're doing.
Literally.
Like,
literally.
And this is the majority of people, and this is the problem with a lot of religions and everything. It's like it's in name. You are that thing. You make a show of it, and you're like, yeah, see, like I put on the clothes, I go to the church thing, and yeah, I'm doing the thing. But it's like kind of like what you're talking about is like this is why education is so important. There's no set guideline really, except for you just show up here. And so you could really easily just be a part of the thing by just showing up. Whereas with what we're doing, you actually have to live the principles. It's like I love how
Otherwise, there's no point.
yeah,
There's no
but
point.
I love how you say like, okay, if somebody comes in to our group and they see the destiny principles and they go through the articles and equaf and all this stuff and they're like, yeah, this is all great. I believe it all. It's like, no, don't believe it. Go study it, understand what's being said, and live it. Like don't believe it. It's not about belief. That's
It'd
not
be like reading a computer programming book, like JavaScript, and you're like, I believe this.
yeah.
So, like, what does it matter? Like, to make something with it,
Right.
like, do something with the information. That's the point. Is not to believe it. It's like it's good that you agree that it's true and makes sense, but that in itself doesn't do anything in the world. And that is the problem with religion. It's like you're saying you believe in Jesus, he's your savior, you're forgiven, you believe in God. What effect does it have in reality? The idea, I guess, is that you'll live as a better person, but where's the evidence of that? Because you're not changing the system. And the whole thing is so obviously a thing that that's why I said there's some good points within it. But it's so easily interpreted in so many ways. And I was just thinking about this too. I'm sure someone has an answer for this. I'm asking this rhetorically, but why is there an Old Testament and a New Testament? Why isn't it just like there's the Jewish Hebrew Torah, and then over here there's the Christian whatever, I don't want to call it Bible because it would miss the point I'm trying to make, like the Christian Testament,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is like totally separate from the Torah.
Yeah.
Like, in other words, the Old Testament and the New Testament, why are they connected at all? Why do they have to be connected at all?
Mm-hmm.
They could be two totally separate things. The only thing is if you try to go in there and nitpick and be like, but Jesus said he's the fulfillment of, yeah, he grew up in that culture.
Yeah.
And he was speaking to those people, but that's like, that'd be like if you took modern philosophy, let's just say there's such a thing called modern philosophy and postmodern philosophy, and you put them together and like, you have to believe both. And you're like, but they're actually like contradictory in a lot of ways. Yeah, this one came out of that one. And I'm just trying to give an example. You know what I mean? They're not, or it's like the Bohr model of the atom versus like the electromagnetic model or something like that. It's like they're different. They're not really the same thing. They're two separate. Or I have to believe in Newton and quantum mechanics, and they're the same. Like there's the Old and the New Testament. You're like, well, really, it's like a very limited view of something. In other words, what if there was just Jesus and he was just saying these points about how to like make the world better, and it had fucking nothing to do with there being a supreme God that exists? But because they're put together, you go, oh, Jesus must have been this supreme God. And then you don't fucking listen to what he actually said.
Wow.
And also, why is it like, did anyone else ever feel this way when you study the Bible? Like, there's very little where Jesus actually says something.
Yeah.
Why can't it just be a document like he wrote where it's like just him talking the whole time? Instead, it's somebody else telling stories about it. How can you, and they don't even match up in every way. And like, how do you reconcile it? Oh, it's all divinely inspired. Yeah, that sounds like something you'd say when it doesn't make sense on the surface.
Right. I don't take responsibility for any of this.
Why couldn't you just be like, hey, it's a stories people wrote down and I believe they're true?
Yeah.
You have to say, no, it was divinely inspired. Why doesn't God go divinely inspire the fucking government to like be best for everybody? Wouldn't that be a lot more important to use his divine inspiration to do? And it's like, well, then we wouldn't have free will. Well, then how can you justify him divinely inspiring something to be written? Wouldn't that be a violation of free will? And if not, then what is the point of it being divinely inspired? Why don't you just believe that the people who wrote it got it right? Why do you have to believe there was some divine inspiration? What does it even fucking mean? Like God was working through you, so he's like mind controlling your body? Does anyone ever sit down and actually ask themselves these questions?
Fuck no. Well, they can't till they find our podcast or until they meet
What
one of us.
what did I see? That was something some guy who was saying, no, maybe I was reading something. Yeah, I was reading something. Uh, so I was reading Hyperion, and it's talking about the poet, right? This poet is like basically, just to give you some context, Mitch, there's like these stories being told by a bunch of different people from their perspectives, and one of them is a poet, and the poet is telling his perspective of um, just how he became a poet, and he's talking about a muse and how like you can like lose your muse, and the way he describes it is like if you've ever experienced where you're just the instrument and it's like divine inspiration through you. It's like these thoughts are not coming from you. It's just like it's just happening, and you get to write it all on the page, right? And um, that's literally how people perceive divine inspiration. Is that, but it's also when you ask somebody, where do your thoughts come from? I have no fucking clue. You
Why
know,
didn't God write? Why didn't God divinely inspire Adam to write a book in the Garden of Eden and all of that? Like, why did it take so long
yeah.
to start writing books about like if
Because
if he could
God
do
is
it?
not what people thought he was.
But you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, and then you get the Billy Carson stuff, where Billy Carson's like,
Right.
dude, you realize like you just believe in some, you literally are just believing in some aliens.
So
That stories go came here from another star and started just creating human beings to make slaves because they realized the slaves they had wouldn't listen to them, and they needed something that was a little bit more slave-like, a
did
little
you
bit more
put
brainwashable, a little bit more controllable. Oh, that doesn't sound familiar.
did you put the what's it called? The autism, schizophrenia, opposite ends of the spectrum thing on I
I
don't see it.
assume so. No.
Give me one sec. I'm just grabbing. Just made me some
Yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
awesome breakfast.
Um, I wanted to bring that in, but I also wanted to go back to the point of like because the Candace thing, you didn't put that either, right? With the leaving the cult of science. I
Oh, I
think
didn't.
that's no,
Okay, I'll put that too.
and I think
Yeah,
that's
this week I just kind of
really
dropped the ball on putting them on the part list. I forgot.
that's okay. I'll be right behind you with that whip and just
I'll do it. Yes, whip me, daddy.
oh um but yeah I just think okay, this point of this video contains content from Paramount Global Events, who has blocked it on copyright grounds. Oh, wow. Wow.
Comments are turned off.
And wow,
I'm
so
gonna
you
save
can't
it to the
even
playlist anyways.
yeah.
Now
Interesting.
they're really fucking with her. They're
Interesting.
like, do not expose our cult.
Wow. That's so cool.
What do you
Okay.
think is the thing is I was listening, I wasn't watching it, so I don't know what she would have Paramount, what was it? Paramount
So,
Global
okay.
Events? What is that? What is Paramount Global Events?
I'm not sure, actually. It
Paramount,
sounds like a movie studio, but
oh, like the moon landing?
I don't know. I have no clue
Matt
what that would be.
Paramount Global is an American diversified multinational mass media and entertainment conglomerate.
Okay.
It used to be Viacom CBS. They're the merger of CBS and Viacom. Basically, it's just Paramount.
Okay, yeah. So it is the movie studio.
I wonder what they claimed exactly.
She only put pictures up, though.
But like, you can't have a news channel where you play clips, and I mean,
But she didn't even
we're
play
acting like they play by actual rules. It's like it doesn't fucking
right.
matter if they have a big enough fucking lawyer that says the thing, they will block it. It doesn't fucking matter the real rules.
Wow. Okay. So okay. this is a really great. I'm glad that that just happened because it
That's
really
crazy.
shows like she was saying things that she was backing up with evidence.
Dude,
And
like
and so
that's the
that
thing
this
is like when you see that title, you're like, oh, NASA occult origins. I've heard this stuff before. People look at the patches of the NASA jacket and you're like, oh, look, that's like some satanic symbol. I'm like, yeah, okay. I mean,
right,
you're trying to tell me a story here.
right.
But she went to the fucking details, and then I go read the Wikipedia and I'm like, oh, that's
Yeah.
literally what she was saying. It's all on the Wikipedia. I mean, I'm not saying
Yeah.
that makes it true, but like it's out there publicly. It's not like she's like making up stories that aren't out there. You know what I mean? In the
Right.
public, in the
Right.
mainstream.
And so okay, so she's actually showing you detail by detail. She's like going through line by line and showing you like, okay, this is what was actually happening. I'm not just making this shit up, right? And
Like NASA came out of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. The Jet Propulsion Laboratory came out of the experiments of a guy literally just shooting off rockets and trying to build rockets because he liked to do it. And then eventually started getting funding for it. That became the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. And then that is eventually what evolved into NASA because it became, in that context, government funded and so forth, right? So, and this is the guy who invented at least one of the things is rockets where you can store the fuel in a solid form or in a form where it won't explode just sitting there by itself. Like it only is explosive upon ignition or whatever. So
yeah,
that's what allowed NASA to become a thing because he figured out how to make rockets that actually you can, they're stable. And he was super into Aleister Crowley, the occult, say, the thing is, I studied Aleister Crowley when I was younger, so I know what it really is versus like you're thinking it's just like you literally worshiping the actual devil, and it's not quite exactly. It's more like if you understand magic and ritual and raising energy to use to like manifest your desires and things like that. It's actually that kind of stuff. I'm not saying it's good. It's just
it's
it's
not
not
the
like they're just like
satanic.
we believe the devil, we like the devil. It's like the devil is more like I think the reason why they have all that stuff is because what it is it's like because I studied all this stuff when I was younger, right? Like it's it's how can I go to the extreme most taboo things,
Mhm.
because if I can do that, if I can push those boundaries, it's like think about somebody who their sexual fantasy stuff is like submission domination type stuff,
Sure.
or like the people who are like super into like like playing with their own feces and stuff like that, and it's this exists, dude. Like it's like a sexual thing, right?
Mhm.
It's like I can understand it from the perspective of it's like extremely taboo thing.
Yeah.
So by approaching that taboo thing, it gives you this energy because you're like not allowed to do it. Do you see what I mean? It's the same
Yeah.
reason in a more simple way why Gen Z is so edgy, why they'll talk about Hitler and stuff like that, just like randomly in conversation and throw it around because like we're not allowed to talk about it. Fuck you. We're extreme. We're gonna talk whatever we want. It's like the Gamergate thing, all this stuff, right? So it's kind of the beginnings of that in a lot of ways. And so it's like you can, it's also why a lot of the elite, when you look at these conspiracy theories, they're into child sacrifice and stuff like that because
Yeah.
it's such an extremely wrong thing to do
Yeah.
that if you're willing to go there, think of how that person would think of like how powerful they are.
Mm.
Like they can get away with anything.
Yeah.
So if your whole point is you're trying to create energy within yourself and like you believe you can channel this energy somehow, then by doing these things, it's like creating energy at a whole nother level. And also they probably have a belief that there is an energy there, like a child or something has a pure innocent energy that's more untapped. And that's
Yeah.
why there's so much child abuse. That's why pedophilia is a thing in a lot of ways, because it's not so much probably about sexual gratification per se, although I'm sure there's some element to that. It's also about like destroying the innocence of something,
Mhm.
harming something, like
Yeah.
abusing something, right? It's like a domination type of thing also. And I think all that is kind of mixed in there. And so these satanic, it's like trying to think of an example. If you put on a concert, you go to a concert. Let's say you go to a concert. Why are you going to the concert?
To
get that
see the
feeling.
artist, to get that feeling, to
It's like you want that feeling of excitement and energy. That when you go to a movie, an action movie, a horror movie,
yeah,
aren't you trying to get a feeling inside of yourself? So just imagine if you actually understood, if you get enough of that energy and you get it real fucking ramped up, you could actually do something with that energy. Like if you understood the mechanics of that somehow, that's what these quote Satan worshiping people were doing.
yeah.
You know, and there's a lot of forms of it, forms that aren't even necessarily about Satan, right? If you read Golden Dawn, Aleister Crowley, you know, there's a lot of these people, right? So I'm just trying to give some context because when I say like, oh, the guy was into Satan worshiping, people don't even really understand. So it just sounds like, oh, weird, you know. They don't really understand what it really is talking about.
Yeah, okay.
Or like
now, yeah,
that
if you were to go now and listen to Alex Jones, his podcast with Joe Rogan,
yeah,
where he was talking about NASA and he was talking about the elite, you know, channeling demons, and that's why they use DMT and all these things. Like I'm trying to give you context to understand what they're really fucking talking about.
right.
What are you gonna say,
Okay.
Mitch?
it's like that idea of Lucifer, right? A lot of the times they're like, well, Lucifer was the one who left God because they like flip it. They say instead of God being this benevolent guy in, the Garden of Eden, whatever, it was like actually that was a power hungry demon god. And Lucifer was the one saying, no, stop bowing down to God. We're equal to God. And that was like the message of like Lucifer, right? He's like the light bearer. And
Right.
both of them, it's still fucked, but it's like you could see how people would go into the opposite polarity of going, oh, wait, yeah, God's actually bad. Us as humans, we're better than that. And that's where I think sometimes people can get tripped up. It's like a subconscious point when you look at self-perfected and self-perfection. He's like, wait, you mean to tell me I'm equal to God? Hold on, that's like what Lucifer was trying to do, and that's why he fell, and then they just end up in this trap and then keep creating hell on earth.
Yeah, because all the people who worship Satan are like, hey, we should change the system so that there's no more like starvation and poverty
right.
and war
Oh
and
yeah,
all that
yeah. All
shit.
those
No,
guys who say
no.
that, yeah.
See, that point you brought up is the point. That's
Yeah.
why like Aleister Crowley worshipped, worship Satan. It was more like an energy he was tapping into, a feeling that he could utilize. And the reason why is because it's the energy of fuck this world the way it is, fuck limitations, fuck restrictions on me. I want to fucking experience bliss, ecstasy, the height of creativity, enjoyment, pleasure. Fuck all the bullshit. I don't want to experience that. I want what I want and I want to create it. And that's what that Lucifer thing represents. It's like, no, like I can do what I want. You can't stop me. So that it's a total self-interest thing.
Yeah.
There's some cool points if you think about it of like, hey, let's not accept our limitations. But you have to balance it with what is my responsibility to myself, the collective life reality. So you're not, and yes, we do deserve to feel good. We do deserve to have bliss and all these wonderful things, but it has to be in balance and it can't come at the expense
It has to
of
be
something else. Right.
The result. Yeah.
Because like this guy who was worshiping all this stuff, maybe he was just looking out for himself of like he wants to experience something. Right. He was like right up there with Aleister Crowley at one point in the OTO, like their religious cult, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And anyways, I'm not trying to hijack it into all of that discussion, but I just want to give some context where it's like, dude, this is like, maybe people don't even know who Aleister Crowley is.
Yeah.
But it's like the Joel Osteen of fucking like satanic ritual magic worship, like
Tony
Yeah, him
Robbins.
and who's the other dude? Anton LaVey.
back in the day when he was alive, people knew who the fuck he was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have a picture of him? The whole like 666 thing? That's funny.
Hold on. No, actually, let me pull it up real quick.
So anyway,
Yeah.
okay, go ahead.
Let me get this picture.
Yeah. Wow, look at his Wikipedia title. Aleister Crowley, English occultist, philosopher, ceremonial magician, poet, painter,
Here.
novelist, and mountaineer.
Oh, wait, whoops. Oh, whoops, wrong one. Sorry. Hold on. I'm spelling it wrong, but whatever. Oh, shit. What the hell?
Hilarious.
That's so funny.
Right, so, yeah. He was just some creepy British sounding dude, like who just like said weird stuff.
Yeah.
Then I read all that when I was like in my 20s. Like And he's like talking about yoga and putting yourself in these extremely uncomfortable positions for hours to like basically like break down any sort of like.
That's why there's all these like Christian women who are like, I do not practice yoga because those are demonic poses. If you really look into, where yoga comes from,
It's true. I mean,
yeah.
they were like, hey, there's whole books where it's just like a book where you're trying to channel a specific demon.
Mhm.
I mean, legitimately,
Yeah,
like it's a whole thing.
yeah.
I wasn't interested in from that perspective, and I didn't even have that context when I studied it. The context I was coming from, which is not any better, it's just the context was I'm unhappy. I'm searching for some kind of thing to make me to go beyond what is just the kind of basic suffering of my life, and I'm looking
Yeah.
for an answer.
Yeah.
And so I studied a lot of different things, and it was like that was it wasn't one of the initial ones, but I learned about it through Colin Wilson, which you probably don't know who Colin Wilson is, but he's got actually that's a book I should definitely start recommending. It's called The Outsider.
Okay.
I highly recommend this book. It was like, I'll tell you a quick
Add
story.
it to the list, Mitch.
I'll tell you a quick
It's
story.
going in. If anyone
Here's
doesn't
how
have
it
the
all
list,
came
okay,
down. All
let's
right.
go
I'll
to-
tell you a quick story. I met Katie in college. Okay.
Oh shit. Oh,
And
we're getting there.
at that point, I was like lost in a way because I was like, I'm not going to go down the path that was planned out for me with my life. I don't want to do that. So I'm like, I'm not going to do that. So I'm kind of just in a limbo period of studying mathematics in university. And then I meet Katie. She was in my calculus class. Long story short, I've told this story before somewhere else, but we start hanging out a lot. And, because I'm so super cool, I like find the best music, right? So listen to some music. I find this music. It's called The Fall. It's like this weird British dude who's like some white rapper guy who even the Wu-Tang says is like the original rapper. So shut the fuck up, Drake. All right.
Even the Wu-Tang,
Right.
everybody.
Even the Wu-Tang
The
KKK, right?
Wu-Tang.
No, but anyways, it's like it's a post-punk band. So Katie's like the researcher. Okay. I go out and I find stuff she researches, right? So she does all the due diligence. Anyway, so she finds because the guy's really good at writing lyrics and he's like a kind of a poet who just puts music behind what he's doing, right? And so she's doing more research on her side and she finds that he mentions this guy Colin Wilson. So she tells me, hey, she's reading it all and she's like, that guy Marky Smith that you like, he says Colin Wilson, blah blah blah. So then we start reading Colin Wilson, and the whole thing about Colin Wilson is he's like, all that suffering you feel in your fucking life, and you're just like angry at the world, and you feel like you're an outsider to the system, and you feel like there's got to be more, and you're very passionate and creative, but you feel like there's no outlet for it, and you're always like, he was giving these examples of all of these artists in history of why they went through that. So it was like the first point of going like, man, there's something kind of beyond, like these people felt that way. They were, like they couldn't be fully creative and they suffered. So it was the first kind of attempt to look at that. And he was really into, especially later in his life, he had this experience, or when he was younger actually, where he got to a point because he was totally into like existentialism, like Sartre, like there's no meaning in the world. It's all depression and suffering and so forth, right? And there's no God. And he had this experience where he was like studying chemistry, I think, in university or something. And there was this chemical, and he was going to kill himself. Like he took the chemical and he was going to drink it and kill himself. That was his in that impulse in the moment. But he said in that moment, it's like he saw himself like as like almost like an experience split into two, and he experienced the point of actually doing it without actually doing it, and then saw this contrast. And then it was like this moment, and you could probably read it. I might not be remembering everything correctly, but he realized there was something, his mind had a power to like create things beyond what he realized. So it was this moment where he kind of questioned reality for a moment of like, wait, maybe there's something else here, right? And that was one of the points where it wasn't the first point, but it was one of the points where I really started looking into like, there's got to be something more to all this. And that because this guy fucking went and just spent his whole life in the library when he was young. He started questioning things at that point. He just went to the library and started reading fucking everything. So he read William James, Aleister Crowley, like you fucking name it. So that's how I got exposed to a lot of things initially, because this guy was like super scholarly, although he was just doing it on his own. And so that led into like a whole bunch of points, right? And so I could see how you could start going down these rabbit holes because you're searching for something.
Mm-hmm.
And what Bernard did is he knew people were searching in all these rabbit holes, and they created all these videos, and they knew how to tag them so that when you were searching certain rabbit holes, you would find Destiny.
Mm.
And then I saw that first Destiny video, and I was like, oh, everything I'm searching for is literally just about me and my happiness. And I'm trying to find the answer of how to be happy. Like I'm going to find some path that if I discipline myself within it and I follow it, at the end of it, I'm going to be that thing that I want.
Yeah,
and I'm going to be happy, and I'm going to have that experience, that bliss, that enlightenment, whatever it is, and you study all these different ways of expressions of that. And then I realized from that first Destiny video of, oh, all of those are traps.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like you're this individual in reality amongst a bunch of other individuals, and all you care about is your own individual point. And you're trying to create this virtual reality experience of yourself being in some experience.
Yeah.
And that you think is the point of being alive.
Yeah.
And it's a fucking lie. It's not real. There's actually like all the enlightenment, bliss experience everyone is actually deep down searching for actually is available to all of us as a bare minimum of daily experiential reality if we all get on the same page and create systems that just alleviate the fucking bullshit. Like maybe we won't experience it in our lifetime, that ultimate point I'm talking about, but it's available there as a potential point for us all to. That's what heaven on earth is. Like, what does heaven on earth fucking mean?
Yeah.
It's like, imagine for a moment, right? Anybody who's ever done like any kind of like ecstasy or something would relate to this. Imagine for a moment, like you just don't feel any stress in survival. And you're just like, imagine you could just feel literally the wind blowing through you. And you're like, oh, I'm just alive. And you're looking around and there's like trees and things. And like, you're like, what could I do right now?
Mm-hmm.
And then also you have these principles that's like, what would be best for me to do right now?
Yeah.
Not out of a fear.
And you would know it wouldn't go away because it's
that's what I'm saying. There's no fear of like, it's just your natural state of like, oh, I don't feel stressed right now because there's nothing there stressing you. But it's not possible with a drug. Maybe a drug can give you a taste of something like that temporarily.
It's a debt though.
But you get a debt. It's going to fuck with you later. And then it's not real. It's just a chemical feeling.
Fentanyl, right? Now you're
sure, but I'm just saying it's just the chemical feeling you're having. Like, okay, just take ecstasy all day. Like that doesn't, then you don't go to work. Like, cause you're not directing yourself within it. You're like, I just want to listen to music. Like, cause you're not considering, but imagine if you could not have the stress and also go do quote labor just meaning like you're doing something with an end product in mind that benefits yourself and everybody. That could also be art. Of course, if everyone only did art all day, but we could redefine what art is.
Yeah.
Like to me, this is cool. Cause like I was talking with Drake, we were talking for a while yesterday, right? And we talked the other day for a couple hours, right? And we were just going on about like food and stuff. Because you told me that point of like how, it's fun staying up late at night, like trying to figure out the cookie recipe and get the right amount of butter and salt and this and that. And like I had said before, I couldn't really relate to that in that specific context. But I totally get the point. Like I could sit up for 3 hours on Suno being like, okay, no, he didn't say that word right. Let me do, because I like music, right?
Yeah.
But now that we have the garden and we have actual food that we have to do stuff with, because like if you don't preserve it, it just rots. We can't possibly eat it all ourselves. We give it the excess to our pigs. That's like, like if the tomatoes start going bad, we just give them to the pigs because then we have to feed them anyways. But we have all this extra food and it's like, oh, that's why people preserve shit. That's why cheese exists.
Yeah.
It's just fermented milk actually, because it was going to go bad. You had to do something with it. Right.
Yeah.
So you start realizing, okay. So anyways, long story short, I'll just make this point. It's like, I'm like, oh, I can make sriracha. I'm making this fermented honey now. I'll just show you a picture real quick.
Dude, that honey sounds really good.
don't know if you can see it very well, but
Yeah. There's a
it's
glare.
basically honey from our hive. It's got what I do is I chopped up some garlic, a whole bulb of shallot, and then I put that with a little splash of apple cider vinegar, and I just kind of submerged it in honey from our hive, and that's going to sit there for 2 weeks. And apparently, it'll be a little bit more runny. It's fucking, and I keep testing it. It's spicy as hell because it's got like 4 habaneros in it, like sliced up, right? Um, and the onion or the shallot and the garlic and everything. So it's got that kind of flavor, right? And then you could take that stuff and you could put it on a burger, and you could just also drink the honey or use it on stuff and drizzle it on pizza or whatever, right? Because we just talked about the honey on the pizza, right?
Yeah.
And I never really quite liked it because it was too sweet, but this will like bring down the sweetness a little bit. Anyway,
yeah,
so my
yeah.
point is, it's just like that to me is art. It's not about I'm gonna like I'll like showing you, but the purpose of it per se isn't to display it.
It's for a function.
It's for a purpose. Like so, it's also science because you're having to figure out. But I don't know why there's even a distinction between art and science. Honestly, I guess art just kind of is the part where you don't fully understand the science, so you kind of have to use your intuition a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why people call it an art and a science, like because there's a creativity aspect to it. Because science is like creativity you don't know. Maybe there's like that balance there.
There's definitely like a part to science where it's like I don't know.
All famous scientists are actually artists.
Yeah, but there's definitely like this aspect of science. Okay, no, check it out. And exactly what we're talking about with NASA and all this. There's this idea that it's sterile, that it's like it's just this scholarly thing, science, and it's just like, yeah, it just is, and I feel comfortable giving my money to that because it's just this sterile thing that I don't understand, and like
Who's the most famous scientist ever?
Albert Einstein.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Total opposite of what you're saying.
Yeah.
I'm not disagreeing with you because that is how people perceive it. I'm just saying, like, just to prove the point, like, he's the total opposite. He was like a maniac all over the place, like, could barely write his shit down properly. I don't know, whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
sticking his tongue out, being weird, yeah, exactly. Right. Like, so it's actually, he was probably, and I know people say, like, whatever. People have criticisms of him. But according to our myth of him, he was like the most creative thinker ever.
Yeah.
Like artistic, using science and math, but like artistic with it, of like imagining shit that you couldn't. So he was just using his imagination as like a canvas. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is that actually even true? Like, I haven't read that Walter Isaacson book on him. Do you recommend it?
Yeah, I think it's a good book, but also it's Walter Isaacson, so it's propaganda.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying everything is false in it, but it's propaganda.
Right.
That's why I'm not saying the true Einstein. I'm just talking about the myth that we have, which may or may not be accurate.
So going back to just the point with the NASA thing is like,
okay. Mitch, did you hear what we were talking about when you left because you had to go get something?
Yeah, I mean, it was that thing you talked about the other day, right?
I don't think he heard. We were trying to show the he was like,
no.
He was like, pull up. I was trying to pull up that Candace Owens thing. I don't remember
because I was like, you didn't put it on the playlist.
Oh, so I went to go pull it up, right? And here's what I see.
Oh wow.
And comments are turned off.
Wow, interesting.
And it had like thousands of comments on it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So, I wish I saw the original.
That's what happens when you try to leave the cult.
Right?
Yeah.
So all the shit people say actually negative about cults is like literally what happens to you when you question the system.
Right.
Yeah.
It's the cult.
It's the biggest cult. Exactly.
It is the cult.
It's funny. It's like if you actually consider what Leopold Aschenberger was saying with Darkesh, where he was saying, well, no, it should be controlled. AI, he was talking about, should be controlled by the government because they have the biggest guns. That's literally like the system is like, it's the biggest cult. So like they get to control what cults you are exposed to or not. And the point that I'm making with this is we're educated in such a way where it's like your impulse with this idea of like a cult, oh, that's scary, and like you should not be a part of it. And anytime they want you to avoid something, they call it a cult, right? And put this image in your mind, but literally the things that you think are like, oh, like NASA, like, yeah, I'm literally, your money literally goes to that. Your tax dollars literally goes to NASA. You are supporting it. Was started as a, basically it's a cult. It has cult origins.
If you go through and study it, just go to the Wikipedia on Jack Parsons.
Yeah.
Because you can't obviously watch the fucking Candace Owens video now.
Right.
But if you just read it, you're like, okay, so he was making some rockets. Okay, and then he was doing a weird cult sexual orgy ritual. Okay, and then he was making some more rockets and he got some money from the government. And then he was over here like doing some weird ritual again and hanging out with Aleister Crowley and raising energy for demons.
And also
okay,
hanging out
and
with
then,
L. Ron Hubbard, who you're like,
right,
oh no, that guy's total cult guy.
And then he was like, and then he was having weird orgies and having like naked pregnant women dancing and doing rituals. Okay. And then, and then over here he was making some more rockets to figure out how to make a stable, solid booster. And then NASA was really, or Jet Propulsion Laboratory was created. And
yeah.
It's like cult NASA stuff, cult NASA stuff, cult NASA. And you're like, what is fucking happening here? This is, it's just casually like, oh yeah. And then obviously did that weird cult shit. And then back to this. And then eventually they took away his security clearance, long story short.
Yeah.
But it wasn't because of the cult stuff. It was because the FBI was cracking down on Marxism. It's because like they were like trying to get, it was like the whole McCarthy era.
Yeah.
And they were like, he had used to like Marxism and stuff, and he's got revolutionary ideas also. It wasn't because of the sexual orgy cult Satan rituals.
Yeah.
They were like, yeah, we don't like that either. But, and then all the historians are like, yeah, but actually that had nothing to do with their reasoning. It was because they were trying to get rid of Marxists in the government. So they got him out of, so he couldn't, then be more embedded. And also a lot of it had to do with, he just wanted to keep doing experiments in the desert with his own way, like not very organized, just kind of like haphazard based on his intuition. Like he didn't want to do it in a very bureaucratic government way.
Right. Yeah.
So they eventually pushed him out. They're like, we're not giving you more money unless you get this guy out.
Yeah.
And then he just went off and created his own cult compound where he went to the next level.
What did he end up do? Like, what happened with his life?
He ended up
he died under suspicious circumstances, like when he was 37, like not even that old.
Dang. Wow.
A rocket that he was working on blew up. Right.
Dang.
Is that suspicious?
Is that suspicious? But no, there was some suspicion there, I think, because of because they were afraid that he was going to sell his basically his knowledge to a foreign government, basically. And so they're just like, all right, well, that so the suspicious circumstances is that
he was about to blow up. So they made sure he blew up.
There you go. There you go.
But think about it. That back then, those rockets was the AI today.
Yeah, definitely.
Back then, that's what AI is now. And I was also thinking about this. I think I was talking to you, Drake, about it. Of like, isn't it weird how obsessed and how much money there is towards space?
Yes, yeah,
and towards
yeah
going to space and studying space and understanding space. Like, what fucking bearing does it have on our current real-time reality, other than, like I said, maybe some solar flares or something? But like, what does Saturn have to do with anything?
Yeah.
Like, what does it have to do? What is some nebula galaxy thing 5 billion light years away have anything to do with life on Earth? And how much money is being spent on that?
Wait a minute, you're not into astrology?
Oh yeah. Okay. No, but that's pseudoscience. That actually, you're trying to make it relevant to your life. Like, at least they're trying to make it relevant.
Yeah. Wow, it's weird. It's really weird.
So, and it's interesting because if you actually look at the point, this all started really, or had origins in, specifically with this Candace Owens video. It had origins in her saying, "I'm leaving the cult of science," in reference to like vaccines and shit. Like, I'm just not going to go along with like whatever science presents.
Just because you said science says this, I'm like, right. No, I'm being skeptical right off the bat. Is what
exactly. And she also played this video of Andrew Tate, which I thought was a great video where he's.
I don't think I saw that.
She played this video of Andrew Tate where he's just like sitting there and just going like, you know what? I've made a decision. Anytime someone says, check the research, look at the data, I'm not fucking looking. I don't give a fuck. I don't care. Like, you tell me about climate. You're gonna say like, oh, the ice caps are melting. Right now, I've got a cup of water. It's got some ice in it. I'm gonna leave, and when I come back, the ice is gonna be melted, and the water level is not gonna rise. He's just like saying all this shit, right? He's like, but he was basically saying like, how can you believe the data that you're presented with, which is created by the very company who's trying to persuade you to buy their thing or do their thing, right? And so like he's basically like,
It's like
oh,
people
so
ask us, "Where's your research?" And I'm like, "So if I did research, you would believe it? Like, what do
right.
you would just be like, well, you did it." That's like, okay, so you want someone else with no interest in doing it do it for us? Like, what are you talking about? It's not how reality works. All the research you believe in was created on purpose to brainwash you
It's
against your
propaganda.
will. To exactly.
It's propaganda to persuade you to basically like, okay,
Who
yeah,
actually
but
takes the fucking document, the research paper, and reads it and understands it? You don't even understand statistics. You don't
no,
understand basic math.
and you're just given a little blurb that says like, yes, when so and so we gave this to 500 people and 251 of them, so that counts as a majority, were better after 1 hour, but after 2 hours they all died. But they don't say that after 2 hours part. They just give you
Right.
the
They
part
just
that's like, see, so we see that it has a lot of potential here, and so yeah,
it's literally how they do it.
that's literally it.
And
Like
you look into anything with any level of curiosity, and you're like, wait, evolution? It's got
I,
holes, these fucking holes in it. And
yeah,
it's based on research. But then the research is always the starting point that the thing is valid in the first place.
yeah.
So it's not
Exactly.
really open
Exactly.
to alternative explanations. So it's imagine a person being like, well, I'm gonna need to see your research on that. You're like, oh, so if I give you the research, you'll read it. Yes, right after church. Where's your fucking research on that?
I sent Katie, like this was a long time ago now, but I sent her this documentary that I had watched on, it was basically on I forget which drugs specifically, but it was like some psychiatric drugs for um people who were having trouble sleeping, people who were having issues with depression, all this stuff, right? And they were recommending these drugs. And now it's like, I think 20%, 1 out of every 5 people is on these drugs in the US, right? Um, and when you actually look at it, the drugs themselves, even in their own description, it says that they're only supposed to be used for like a short term, like a couple of weeks at most. But but the the people who are prescribing them are giving these to people, and they're on it for years. And then they have these like psychotic breaks, and like they're hallucinating things. They're like
Why
their
would you
whole
want someone to stop taking your drug?
right,
Right,
right.
I'll
what
be
kind
right
of
back.
business model is that?
But when you look at like they presented in this documentary, they presented the research of these drugs, and they're like, yeah, it shows after 4 weeks, all these things improve. But literally, and they improve faster than the person who's taking a placebo or whatever. But literally, week 5, there's a sharp drop off, and week 6, it's like it's twice as bad as it was before, like before you even started taking the drug. And then like
Wow.
week 8, you're considering suicide. You're actually like, and so, but they don't show that in the research, and literally they paid. And here's what they said is they have their research team do all the research that they want created. They have them do that. And then they pay someone who's got like a reputation at some university or whatever, who's like, oh, this is a good name. They pay that person a hefty amount to put their name on the study or on the research.
Mhm.
And so then when the research is presented, it's like who are you going to talk to? The person who's got the big name. And you talk
Mhm.
to that person, they don't know anything about the study actually, except for that they got paid to go along with it.
Yeah, and they
Which
could
is
probably
like
just speak with enough certainty, conviction, right?
exactly, exactly. And so then they don't want for it to come out that this is actually a terrible fucking study, that this is actually a terrible drug or anything. So they fight to keep it that way. And we talked about the guy, I forgot his name now, but who did the research into the what's that pesticide, the Astra something, whatever. But basically the pesticide that was literally uh having an influence on frogs, turning them into the opposite sex, and having a severe impact, not just on frogs. He went later on to do research and found that this has impact, a bigger impact in mammals, a bigger impact in pregnant women, like for what happens to their children. And this is literally what happened to him was the company, the pesticide company came to him and said, "Hey, here's a check. Here's what we want you to do research on." And when he came back and said, "Well, I can't sign off on this. Like everything that you're saying is wrong." They said, "Oh, fuck you. In fact, we're going to ruin your name for not doing the research that we wanted you to do." And literally turned him
Suddenly,
into
like all like the lights go down and like all that pesticide starts like sprinkling down on him. He's like, no.
like,
You're like, well, I guess he was right, guys.
he becomes a drag queen.
He becomes a woke activist.
Yeah. And so it's just okay. That is the cult of science, though. That is the cult of science where it's like they present you with this research that they made up that actually has no basis in reality. And then they say, like, if you don't like you don't trust the science. Oh, yeah, okay.
A real cult is there's somebody at the top who's mind controlling everybody to just let them do what they want, and it only benefits them, and they're just abusing everybody. Isn't that what everyone believes a cult, like a bad cult, is?
That's what everyone's afraid of when
Isn't
they
that literally the
cult.
fucking system?
Yeah.
It's just like a machine-like entity instead of a human being.
Yeah.
And it's just got everybody in its grasp using money and energy and as energy, but and energy to control everybody.
Yeah.
And literally everyone could shut it off within themselves, but we're too. Could the slaves on a plantation have fucking stood up and walked away?
Yeah.
I mean, they could definitely run faster than their slave masters,
How did you know that?
but they were afraid of getting whipped. I guess, you know. I know this is a story, but it's like you're just afraid of that shock you're going to get. You know, that punishment.
And it's you don't trust yourself enough to go find all the others until eventually you can say, okay, look, we got enough. Like we got enough people. Let's do it in a new way. You know?
I mean, there's also like, if you actually look at literature from that time, you look at like what was actually happening at that time. The story of like getting whipped is like, sure, that happened, but it was more likely that it's kind of like you have a job today, where you're like, you're comfortable enough.
People
Maybe you
don't
don't
want
like
to
the
admit
circumstance.
that because they want to believe they're not enslaved.
Right.
So they don't want to admit that the slaves back then, literally, it was just like they had jobs. And I don't know if they had to pay rent, but they had basically a place to live. They probably had it better in the context of you didn't have to fear you weren't going to have a place to sleep if you
Well, you know
don't.
what?
You still
So,
have to go to work, so it's not really different per se. But
And you have basic protection.
I mean, one of the things that they could do, like on Sundays, the slaves had, on certain plantations, slaves had off, and they would go rent themselves out to other people. Like they could leave their plantation, go rent themselves out to somebody else, give a portion of it to their master, and keep the rest for themselves so they could have some spending money.
it's kind
It's
of like
like,
OnlyFans.
Can you elaborate what you mean?
yes, please.
You just rent yourself out. I don't know. It's like you have a husband. I don't know.
It's like you
It
have a
just made me think of
platform.
it like it's like you have a body and you're like, oh, I'm gonna go rent it out. You know what I mean? And like make some money for it. You give some of it to OnlyFans. You keep it. So the rest for yourself.
Yeah,
And you're
yeah,
like,
yeah.
yeah, it's a weekend. I'm gonna just show my tits and then like make some money. It's very similar. Like, isn't that kind of what they're doing? It's actually more degrading than I'm gonna go physically work. Like,
Right.
oh, they just had to rent themselves out. I'm like, what do you think a part-time job is? How is
Yeah.
that any different? You're just like, I'm gonna I'm gonna rent my body to you. You tell me what to do with it and give
Yeah.
me money. And as long as you give me money, I will just be like a robot and perform the actions you're telling me to do.
People
Isn't
try to
that what a job is?
keep trying to get me to watch this show, and I don't remember what it's called now. But apparently the premise of it is that you go to work, but all your memories from working is completely cut off from you when you're not at work. And so you're like when you're at work, you don't think of when you're at home. You're just like completely like either drugged or something, but like
Is this why people use alcohol
it
and
is.
smoke?
Right. Right.
Anyways, yeah.
And so the whole premise of the show is like you don't there's no connection between like your work life and your home life. When you're at home, you don't know what you do for work even. Like it's just okay, I just get to be home. And that's really
You don't have to have it as part of your memory.
right, right, right. And but it's really like a separation, which is what people do. Is like they create this partition in their minds of like, well, I just it's not a part of my life. I just have to go do that thing until I can go and live and shit, you know? And I'm just
It's not what
considering
you're
that.
doing when you like worship God.
Yeah, that's like that's the one of the big criticisms of like, oh yeah, you go out and party on Saturday and then you're back at church on Sunday, you know?
But even that, it's like that's like it's like some kind of contradiction.
Yeah.
I don't even see it that way. It's just like you're in reality, like going to work every day, but then you go to church where it's like you're somehow connecting to like the divine reality. You see what I'm trying to say?
Okay.
But then you just go back to like the mundane reality where like, but I live as a good person and I'm charitable and all this stuff, like as if you're somehow applying that, but it's really just two different lives, actually.
Yeah. So this actually ties in really nicely with the other thing that I wanted to show, which was this thing. All right. Um, basically, this guy we talked about this guy before, but basically this guy he uh he had that talk about how if you look at society, it's all becoming one monoculture, and then that monoculture is literally like everything that you value or whatever you thought you valued like means nothing. So what's the purpose of you like even like
You're not
what
perpetuating yourself
exactly.
in any of your actual personal identity or anything.
Exactly.
You're just,
Exactly.
yeah.
So,
But then also that the monoculture is promoting like not having kids and stuff. And so like
right,
it's all those people are going to die out eventually.
right.
So he's like, create your own culture and then you'll procreate. And then you're going to be the ones in the future that's determining what culture exists basically, because you're the only ones having kids basically.
Exactly. Which is what we're doing here, which is
So they have
really
their own
cool.
little weird cult they created.
Yeah. But it's really cool if you actually consider it, just this point of like we've had so many people come into this group who maybe didn't think that they were going to have kids or that wasn't like part of their plan or what they were thinking of in that moment, or it would happen like much later, or they didn't see how they were going to get together with someone and they're having kids, or even people who this is like kind of one of the things that I see that's like really special. But when people come into this group and they have this idea of like, I don't want to have kids because, the world is so tough out there, or I don't want to mess it up, or, all these things. And they see like, oh, I can actually have kids. And they do. It's such a huge shift, such a huge like conversion. Like, do you realize how much has to actually be there, be real in order for somebody to have that transformation, to go from, I don't want to have kids. Like, I know it would be wrong for me to bring kids into this world, or I don't want to fuck them up, or, the whole host of like, people really make these decisions of like, no, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. But then,
Like you're literally ending your genetic line. Do you
right,
understand what you're doing?
right. But then being able to come into this group and see like, oh shit, I can do that. Like there's hope actually. It's not just hope. It's
Think
like,
about a tree saying, "Oh, I don't want to bring new trees into this world."
yeah, wow.
Wouldn't it? Wouldn't it only be a benefit if the tree reproduced?
Yeah,
The only reason why it's not a benefit if humans reproduce is it's just programmed to be retarded because we have a language.
yeah,
So you can fuck with somebody based on language. Because what we're showing is you can change your language, you can understand things differently, and then you can realize like, oh, we could change things, we could interact differently. So it would be a benefit to continue existing.
Yeah. So let me start here, I think.
Me, Octavian's younger brother, and Octavian, and we all sent them in and filled out tons of questionnaires. So that this is something that
Actually,
and I'm speaking from a perspective informed by research. And actually, what we're doing
it's also very
was
weird
genetic.
how like they seem very excited about getting their kids tested for autism.
Yeah.
And being like kind of, maybe they're not proud, but it's kind of like, yeah, they're definitely autistic, and yeah, this one's definitely autistic, and it's like,
yeah, and
so
like,
fucking weird.
She's like claiming that she's autistic as well, or whatever.
But he's not. He's schizophrenic, I guess.
But I just wanted to play this part because somewhere in here, and maybe it's already passed, but he says they're going through their credentials, and he's like I guess a neuroscientist or whatever.
Yeah.
But then he says that he memorized the entire DSM, like all the diagnosis in the DSM. Like that is some serious shit.
It is, but not really. Like if you have an effective memory and you just study it and it makes sense to you, you can just remember it. Like,
Yeah,
oh yeah, those symptoms is that disorder. I mean, it's like
yeah.
It's like a kid knowing every Pokemon and every power and what upgrade level and tree evolution branch and like, you know, every episode and what happened. It's really not different.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. You're right. But then he gets into
we needed to clearly separate them into these different groups so we could find out what genes were correlated with this.
And there's similar research with autism in which actually we had our oldest son participate. Like the whole family did cheek swabs. You, me, Octavian's younger brother, and Octavian, and we all sent them in and filled out tons of questionnaires. So that this is something that happens with schizophrenia, happens with autism, it happens with a lot of things.
So let's talk about. I'm
going to start with the schizophrenia spectrum
because it's the one that I think less people are familiar with. A lot of people are familiar with the autism spectrum, but the schizophrenia spectrum a lot of people are unfamiliar with. So because this might surprise people, do you know the schizophrenia spectrum goes from schizophrenia to what other common psychiatric condition?
You mean at the other end of it, like the opposite?
Yeah, the other end of it.
Autism?
No.
I mean, what's the opposite? I mean, schizophrenia, as I understand it, is like overmodeling.
Yeah, no, but this means that all of these conditions are linked, genetically linked.
Linked. Okay. So they're linked. Okay. So okay.
Give you a hint. It's the single most common psychiatric condition in the world, and it's particularly common in women.
Borderline
so
personality
obvious.
disorder?
I know, right?
No, personality disorders are on the schizophrenia spectrum. Well, kind of ours them are, but it's depression.
Oh. Huh.
Depression is one end of the schizophrenia spectrum. Schizophrenia is the other end of the schizophrenia spectrum. So let's go through broadly how this works, okay?
Yeah.
Because all of these, they share genetic components and they share sort of diagnostic components. And we're also
like, it's really obvious, actually. Like once he says it, it's like, oh yeah. And we've talked about this, maybe not.
Other end of the spectrum doesn't mean the opposite. Because in that video, what they're going to argue later, which I don't care about at this point, but he's trying to say like that he thinks the way your brain works, in one hand you have autism, and if you have the opposite functioning, you have schizophrenia in extreme cases. But he's saying depression and schizophrenia are on the spectrum. So it's like you could say depression is more like the most mild form of schizophrenia in a way. It's not saying it's the opposite, if that makes sense.
Right. I just think that, well, we've talked about this on the podcast before, where it's like, yeah, you're participating in schizophrenia, where you have these thoughts that are like, these thoughts are not you, and like, and it can get to the point where it's like you're having depression.
Can we look up the definition?
Oh yeah, do that.
DSM schizophrenia. DMS. I don't know why it auto-corrected it at DMS. Okay, here, I'll share my little deal. Two or more of the following each present for a significant portion of time during a 1 month period. That's DSM-4. Okay, let's look DSM-5. This is the most recent one.
Okay.
Two or more of the following. So this is schizophrenia spectrum and other psychotic disorders. Each present for a significant portion of time during 1 month period. At least one of these must be 1, 2, or 3. So, okay, so it's the same as over here. Delusions, hallucinations, disorganized speech. And then there has to be at least one must be. Okay. And then it says Oh, 1 through 4 are the same. I get it. Grossly disorganized or catatonic behavior. So he doesn't have to have that. Negative symptoms. Affective flattening, alogia, or avolition. And this just says diminished. Okay, well, I don't know why they give different examples.
Yeah.
Diminished emotional expression or avolition. Okay, let's look at that for a moment.
But that is
When you're depressed, how are you? You're like,
yeah, diminished.
like I was talking to someone the other day, and at the end of our conversation, they're like, yeah, okay, well, I'll go do that. And I was like, well, don't sound depressed about it.
Yeah.
They're like, do I sound depressed? And I'm like, yeah. They're like, really? I don't notice that. And I'm like, do I sound depressed? Like I'm the way I'm speaking right now versus I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah, I'm here. You know, like there's an obvious like you're in diminished emotional expression, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, so any one of these three, two or more of the following, one has to be one of these three.
Mhm.
So diminished emotional expression and delusions.
Yeah.
Okay, so for a significant portion of the time since the onset of the disturbance, level of functioning in one or more major areas such as work, interpersonal relations, or self-care is markedly below the level achieved prior to the onset. Or when the onset is in childhood, there's a failure to achieve expected level of interpersonal, academic or occupational function. Duration. Continuous signs persist for at least 6 months. And in that 6 months, for at least 1 month, you have to have one of these. During these prodromal or schizoaffective disorder and depressive or bipolar disorder with psychotic features have been ruled out because either no major depressive or manic episodes have occurred concurrently with the active phase systems. If mood episodes have occurred during active phase systems, they have been present for a minority of the total duration.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So you can't basically be depressed during the time. The disturbance is not attributable to the physiological effects of a substance or a medical condition. If there's a history of autism spectrum, the actual diagnosis of schizophrenia is made only if prominent delusions or hallucinations, in addition to other required systems, are also present for at least a month. Why is that relevant?
I guess because they don't want to call an autistic person schizophrenic unless they're like seriously hallucinating or delusional.
Okay. They dropped a lot of stuff. Interesting. Paranoid types. They're just getting rid of all the types. That's weird. It's just severity. So that instead of types, they just have it as a severity.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So that's
specify if. Oh wow. Okay, so I'm just looking at this point. Schizoaffective exclusion. If mood episodes have occurred during active phase symptoms have been ruled out because either no major depressive or manic episodes have occurred concurrently. So they're not going through like mood swings. Or if mood episodes have occurred during active phase symptoms, they have been present for a minority of the total duration. So it's not like you're basically just bipolar, schizoaffective, depressive. So it's like you're ruling out those points and you're saying it's just basically it's a schizophrenia. It's a delusional, hallucinatory point, right?
Yeah. The way
But
I read
here's
that
all
though
yeah,
is
go ahead.
like if you have schizoaffective, basically like they don't have a specific diagnosis for a schizoaffective disorder. It's just
I think they do. I think they
schizoaffective
do.
disorder and depressive
It's just saying
bipolar disorder.
it's just saying like you can't be classified schizophrenia if you've had delusions, but you're basically going through mood swings, and as a minor part of that, you had a delusion.
Oh, I see.
You see what I'm saying? So it's like that would maybe be schizoaffective disorder because that has its own class of symptoms or something, right? Or it could just be a depression and you had a delusion or something like that, right?
Gotcha.
Or you're being bipolar or something, right? So, maybe, yeah. So, but when you look at this kind of stuff, the reason I wanted to look at it was, I guess, 2 points. One, have you ever gone through a 1 month period where you were delusional every day? And people say, like, no. But what do we classify as delusion?
Yeah.
Because if somebody every day says, I'm speaking to Jesus, I hear him in my mind, and they go to work and they go to people's birthday parties and they seem cheery and happy, you would not say that person is schizophrenic.
I mean,
right?
I would.
No, but if they were like, hey, my friend, I think they're schizophrenic, they're saying they talked to Jesus, and they went to the psychiatrist, and they're like, yeah, oh yeah, I'm getting along great at work. Yeah, I'm doing this, and I have these plans, and I'm going to Italy next month, and life's going great, blah blah
They
blah.
would not
And
get
they're
the
like,
diagnosis.
but you listen to Jesus, and he talks to you. He's helping me right now. Yeah,
Yeah.
yes, Jesus. Yes, Lord. Yes, Lord. Okay, Jesus is telling me that, yes, you really are a good soul. Yeah, I don't know, whatever. I'm just saying, like,
Yeah.
you wouldn't be like that person digital, but wouldn't they actually fit? Now, let me go back real quick. They wouldn't fit the definition because, where did it go? For a significant portion of the time since the onset of the disturbance, level of functioning in one or more major areas, such as work, interpersonal relations, or self-care, is markedly below the level achieved prior. And that was why I made that whole story about, they're going to work, everything's fine, going on vacation, they're showing up at parties, nothing, there's no problems. But literally, I'm hearing Jesus talk to me every day in my mind.
Right.
That's not schizophrenia.
Yeah.
So there's this audio Bernard has, I forget what it's called, but he's talking about, I think it's just like a comment he makes in it of like, the purpose of the psychologist, psychiatrist is just to like keep you in the system.
Right.
So they're really just defending the system. It's not actually about helping you, with your actual mental disorder. It's not actually about helping you with becoming an effective human being, like best for all context. It's just about making sure you go to work. Because if a person goes to work every day and they perform properly and they do all their normal functions as a human being in our current society, but they literally say they hear the voice of Jesus in their head every day talking to them, you can't get that person diagnosed according to the DSM because they have to be below the functioning level. So suddenly when it affects your ability to participate in the system, that's when it's a problem.
Right. Yeah.
But what that implies is you can still have people going to work, being the president, being, running companies, saying they talk to Jesus, saying they're getting their directions from Jesus. But as long as they're functioning in the way we expect, that's okay.
Yeah.
So they could literally be having their decisions influenced by their fucking delusions.
Yeah.
What were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say that's the problem with all of our education is it's literally just to keep you in the system. Like when people think of education or just people being educated in their lives, it's like I was telling this story of how when you're a child, like I know we all experience this, and I don't know how many people experience this, but I imagine that it's not a small number. But like,
pretty sure it's 100%.
It's just a small percent of people are children. But having the experience of like, okay, but I want to do something about like, why are there hungry people? Like, why are there people who are in poverty? Why are there homeless people? Like, I want to do something about that. And it seems like we're just kind of taught like, well, just go to school and get a job and just like, and
or
like
volunteer.
Yeah,
Go
or
volunteer.
exactly, you're volunteer, or your parents are like, maybe one day you could do something about that, but you're never like educated on like why is this happening and what can be done about it or any of that
You
stuff.
just go, that's a homeless person. So like suddenly there's this category of person that exists just by nature that's called a homeless person.
Right.
Like we didn't do that with our kids. Like we might now refer to them, oh yeah, like that's a homeless person we're talking about, but we're talking about why they're homeless. I mean, I don't know the specifics of that person, but the general context of why there are people who are quote homeless.
Yeah.
Right. But now there's all these people who are like, I want to be homeless. I don't want a fucking 9-to-5 job. They're not even like, they don't have a choice. I mean, they don't have a choice, but I'm saying like, they're just like, no, it's like a lifestyle being homeless. I'm not willing to sell my soul.
We just saw like that video of the guy who's saying like, oh yeah, I'm 40 whatever, and like I'm about to be homeless, or homelessness is coming, not just for me, it's coming for like everyone out there.
But that's a different one, I think, right?
Yeah. That's a different video. But this guy's basically just saying like, hey, homelessness is coming, and all the comments are basically like, yep, just if you know you're going to be homeless, you should get a PO box, get a UPS address, and go get a gym
Live in
membership at the Y, and yeah, you can live in your PO box. But like get a gym membership so that you can take showers there, and like it's basically like, yeah, just prepare to be homeless. Like it's gonna happen. There's no actual solution there. Just get comfortable with being homeless.
Here, let's watch this real quick. Hold on, Kitty just sent me this.
Go ahead.
Let me
But um just remind me what we
Where
were
do
talking
you
about.
stay if you're homeless? You sleep in your car? Because how do you get gas? for your
Yeah,
car?
that's what it was
You
saying. Like if
find
you
one of those
have a
tents?
car,
I can't
sleep
get
in
it to
Dude,
there.
there's
work.
like
Let
these
me
tent fucking cities.
let me send it to you.
Wow.
Okay.
Let me send it
forgot
to you,
about
Drake.
those. In Minneapolis, me and Jess used to ride on this like bike trail, and it's like really nice trail, and it literally goes through all the essentially the south side of Minneapolis. There's like some really nice parts, there's like less nice parts, and for a while, for like blocks and blocks, it's just tent, and like no one was there during the day because they were all out doing whatever
Working.
they do during the day. They're on the corner, right? Asking for money. But it was like it reminded me
Doing
of like a
OnlyFans.
music festival. Drake, do you ever go to those music festivals where people tent?
Wait, what?
Yeah, yeah.
You-
I know what you're talking.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like a
yeah.
music and camp festival, right?
Of course.
It looked oddly similar. I'm just like, oh, these are like they're just fucking hanging out
Yeah.
all the time though. It's like that's their permanent
They
location.
should be working hard.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
got
yeah.
it.
You know, they should go just, pull themselves up by
live
the
in my
bootstrap.
car. Can I see? Yeah. You want to?
Hang on. This guy just got asked. Let me close this so I can reopen
Yeah,
it so I can just
I
start
know.
from the beginning.
Yeah. It's so fucking annoying about Instagram.
Yeah.
Hey, how much do you pay for rent in Vancouver, Canada?
No, I don't pay any rent. I live in my car.
Where was
Can
it
I
just
see?
Yeah, you want to check it out?
Yeah, let's do it. So where do you sleep?
So here, this is pretty much my bedroom, my kitchen and everything. I know a pretty cool guy that makes a camping kitchen for the Tesla and the Rivian. So over here you have two pull-out system. On one side you can store your cookware, and then on this side you got your induction cooktop, your sink,
You drive a
water. There are way more
He's not
storage
homeless.
underneath the bed. This is the front, and I have my little
Got any
tiny fridge
cereal?
here. I got some cereal,
Dude, what's that
and
cereal?
some yogurt,
Oh, okay.
kale, sausage, and some seasoning.
Hey, excuse me.
Hey,
Wow.
That
So-
guy is okay. Let me tell you one thing. That guy is not fermenting hot honey. Okay. What? I mean, and that guy's not homeless because
doubt
he
he's
has no
getting
money.
laid.
He's
Oh,
not
right.
homeless because he has no money.
He's driving a Tesla.
He's being homeless because he doesn't. Maybe he can't afford a place in Vancouver.
He's in
Vancouver is
Vancouver.
nuts.
Yeah.
So that may be he's homeless.
Dude, what
but
does he
he's-
do in the middle of the night when he like wants to like get up?
That's
You know,
what I-
you ever have those dreams where you like, whoa, he like hits his fucking head, knocks himself out. He had not much space
dude.
up there, dude. That
Dude,
looked
that was
looked
nuts.
really. If you're claustrophobic, you can't do that for sure.
Imagine you're like a Chinese person and you sent your child over to like live in Canada to like be proud, and like that's what they end up.
Yeah.
Dude, that's crazy.
And he's like, it's so much better than China, guys. You have no idea.
dude, that was like a condensed fucking area. God damn. Okay, how does it work too? This is like a total noob question, but you know the Teslas and the Chargers? Like, do you
pay for
at
it?
the station? Like,
I
is
don't
it just
know.
fucking free?
I think you pay.
Can someone
Maybe
drop
you have
in
a
the comments?
subscription or something.
Like,
I
I
think
can't
you
imagine it's free, but I'm like, how much is this?
I'm pretty sure it's like $20 or something like that.
I was like,
you
I'll buy a
pay
Tesla. You don't have to pay
Tesla
for fuel.
charging station?
I don't know how that
yeah,
works.
it's like build to your app or whatever.
Oh, genius. Genius. Well, evil genius.
Katie
Not
sent me
actual
another
genius.
one.
Yeah.
Dude, that
Um,
shit is weird. And then at night he just is.
And how does he wash his
At night
clothes?
he's sleeping in his Tesla at this park. Like you can't be getting a good night's sleep there. Like what if the
Dude, but
what if the homeless guys are knocking on your
but
door?
what if hold on, but what if when it's like full self-driving and it just like drives you around?
Dan, yeah, he's like yeah, he's like
Or-
wants to be soothed.
Or like
to
if
sleep.
someone comes up, it just like
Talks to him.
moves.
Let me see.
Dude, that dude, oh my,
They're probably like
he'll be able to get the
tamper-proof.
metaverse goggles. and then he'll just be able to like totally pretend like he's, crushing it.
Watch the full reel. Click that.
All right. There you go. We don't need that music.
Coffin Homes.
Rent is so expensive. Whoa, that's like a real thing.
250 a month into 20. Wow, 26.
Guys, what are you talking about? Capitalism has made it so much better for everybody. Like,
this is in Hong Kong. This is like not even in mainland China.
Guys, can you like Rockefeller didn't even have air conditioning, and now even the poorest of the poor has air conditioning. See, like they're living like a king
in a coffin.
In a coffin.
They have internet. They probably have internet. Wow.
They can watch people like stream on Twitch all day.
Yeah.
Dude, that is fucking wild. Okay, now back to at the beginning of the episode, we were talking about like, imagine when you die, you fucking come back to see your creation. And now you're instead of you being born where you got a home, like you got shit you can do here, and you just waste it, and now you get born into a coffin.
Or even beyond that, like you die, and you just basically have to look at your creation.
Right.
And then you realize in that moment you're God. And you're like, what the fuck was I doing?
Why for some fucking
like literally you die and you realize you're God. Like, oh, but God can't. Don't you believe Jesus was like God incarnate in human form? Like that's, and he said we're all God. Like Jesus, dude. Like wake up. Like imagine you die and you're like, oh shit, I'm actually it. I'm the thing that I believed was like the thing that takes responsibility and was all powerful and all that stuff. And like, but that doesn't mean because you're a human being, you have access to being the power of God. Because when you die and you're that God, you're not all powerful. You're just like literally, I can't do anything. That's why God created shit. Because God was like, I can't do anything. Like there's nothing to do. Like I need them to do some shit. So he starts creating shit. So you have it, everyone has it all backwards. Like they imagine there's the supernatural, perfect, beyond all comprehension God that's just there that can do anything. But then also the one thing we're aware that it created is a total fuck up. And you're still putting your faith in this thing.
What do you guys think purgatory is? Like maybe it's when you die and then you realize you're like, God damn it, I didn't fucking do anything with my life. Well, damn myself, right? And then you're just sitting and you're basically stuck there and you have to fucking wait now because now you don't have a body, you can't change the system, and then you have to just wait for the other beings to come in and actually change the system.
Yeah. This is the real purgatory. Because that's the word purging.
What was that, Cam?
Because we're being purged.
Yeah. Well, purge out your fucking ego.
What are you looking for, Drake?
No, I was just looking at what I was saying before.
How much are these coffin homes?
250 USD a month, dude.
I'm pretty sure Christine's assessment of your first apartment when she first came over was that it was.
He had a double wide coffin home
vibes.
I had a double wide.
Now look at you.
Okay. All right. So I wasn't like in one of these single coffins.
What if the next trend is like literally homeless people buy a coffin and bury it in the ground and they live in the coffin and they're called like homeless cemeteries?
Dude.
And they're like at night the dead come to life, and then it's like they just like party all night.
The only way they survive is because they hook up their energy, to the grid, and so the grid can feed off their energy, and then in exchange they get like a microchip or like
that's where the pods come from, dude. The Matrix pods. They're literally like coffins.
Okay. So we're investing in this, right? You guys are down, like, we're gonna like start a fund and make sure we can buy up real estate so we can do this, right? Trying to make the money.
We need to have all the land for the. I mean, dude. I'm just realizing the hottest real estate right now is cemeteries.
Dude, yeah.
Just evict these fucking dead bony motherfuckers, and then just get a homeless squatter in there.
Yeah, and plus they have all
do like a sublease. Do a sublease on your coffin.
Yeah.
Hey, buy a coffin plot, but sublease it out to a homeless person while you're not yet using it.
You want to hear something actually?
Oh, genius.
I talked to an entrepreneur here. He's like,
coffin coin.
What?
Coffin coin. There's got to be a cryptocurrency somehow in there. Crypt. Use the word crypt somehow. Somebody figure it out.
Oh my God, you guys.
Cryptocurrency.
Cryptcoin.
Cryptcoin. Crypto.
No, I talked to this guy
Crypt
who
keep.
he basically was like, I try to talk to the mayor here in Orlando about doing these under the overpasses, having these tunnels because he saw it in some other country where they have these tunnels where you can rent out a um, basically like
Sarcophagus.
yeah, basically like a little coffin for yourself. It's to sleep in. And he's like, and the homeless people can use it. And all we have to do really is just build like these little tunnels and it can be hooked up to electricity so that they can charge their phones, they could watch stuff, while they're in there. And he's like, and if they wanted to like charge their phone or put a TV in there and like have it be their place, they just pay like $10 a month. But like for everyone else, it's free and they can just sleep in there. And he's like, but the city won't do it because there's like some stupid bylaw or whatever that you have to have like 100 square feet per person.
Ugh,
It's so
parents.
stupid. Yeah. I'm like, okay. Yeah,
Imagine the
it's
Ty
like,
Lopez of 2037. He's like, hey guys, I'm here in my coffin.
Wow. Yeah, it gives me vibes of Snow Crash. If anyone hasn't read Snow Crash yet, like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, I may
What
not
are
be
you
that
even
far in my
doing?
sci-fi.
What are you even doing at night if you haven't read Snow Crash even? Holy shit.
It totally gives you the vibe of like those future cities, it does such a good job of like giving a visual of the landscape of the future if we don't fucking change the system, just all owned by the fucking mega corporations.
dude.
Yeah.
So I was just trying to figure out what the point was that I was trying to make before, but it was
What were we
literally of
talking about
like
before?
psychology and how like it's all geared towards, you just fitting in with the system.
Going to work, staying in the
Yeah.
system. Yeah, staying in your coffin.
And so where I was getting to is just like why I was bringing up the homelessness is because like we're taught is like, oh, well, yeah, that's just a thing that happens. And maybe you could be the one to solve it, but then you're not given any of the tools or the resources to actually understand life. You're not given any of those points to see like, yeah, here's how we could solve it. Here's how we could work together. And in fact, what happens is you end up going to school and you're just taught to like get good grades so that you can get a job. And then you end up getting a job. And by the time you end up getting a job, like all the dreams that you had of the things you wanted to do in this world is just like it's gone. You've been so indoctrinated and so just like conditioned to let go of all that shit and you become a cog in the system, literally. Right. And I guess the point that I'm making is it's so interesting. If you look at what we're talking about here is being educated for life. We're talking about being educated for life. That's why we have all the Destiny material. It's actually understanding life, not just being educated in this stunted, limited way to only work for the system, to only get a job, to only like that's not living, you know? And and
What is a delusion?
what we're living right now.
But I mean, what is it actually?
A delusion? Let's look it up.
Because the whole thing about schizophrenia is, according to their definition, if you have delusions for more than a month, like prominent delusions for more than a month, and it affects you, like in that month, you're performing way less than what you were doing before. It's affecting your work, your life, etc. Then you're schizophrenic, right? But when they say delusions, what does they mean?
So I looked up the etymology.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's from delude.
Oh, like the flood, like deluge.
Deluge, yeah.
It comes de and ludo. Ludo means play, which is interesting.
You're watching a play in your mind. Ludicrous.
Literally, it's like you're playing yourself.
So a false
You're playing
belief
with
or
yourself
judgment
in your
about
coffin.
external reality held despite incontrovertible evidence to the contrary.
Roll it up.
Holy shit.
Roll it up. Roll it up.
Yeah. Okay, so a false
Say it again.
A false belief or judgment about external reality held despite incontrovertible evidence to the contrary, occurring especially in mental conditions. We are living that.
But the problem is incontrovertible. That's where they get you.
But it is incontrovertible.
Okay, hold on.
That's
What
but
the
you
fuck
can't
does
say believe. You
incontrovertible
can't.
mean? All right.
You can't say hearing the voice of God, or well, I guess this is not the
Okay.
same thing as a hallucination. But what's a
Just for
hallucination?
everyone.
Hold on, look up hallucination too.
Okay,
real quick.
okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Rich.
Here's incontrovertible. Impossible to deny or disprove, or necessarily or demonstrably true. Yeah.
Impossible to deny.
Yeah.
Impossible to disprove. So if you have a false belief, that's impossible to disprove.
And
Yeah, or if
hallucination.
it's
But
demonstrably
incontrovertible basically means like it's flat out wrong.
An experience involving the apparent perception of something not present.
Okay. And then what was the other one? What was the other symptom?
Delusions and hallucinations. And then the third one was, what was the third one? You had it. Look it up.
Isn't this hanging on your fucking wall, Cameron?
No, he pulled it up earlier. The third one was I don't know. Oh, here it is. Third one was disorganized speech. Holy shit. Everybody has that.
Speech. God damn.
Everybody has that. For sure. It's like,
yeah, that's a very specific thing. I know what they're referring to, but let's ignore that one for now.
I wonder what
because most people basically it's the delusions that are the problem.
Yeah. Disorganized speech is like when you try
rare.
to say something and it's like coming out like blah, 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 blah.
Let's not make anybody.
Interesting. So schizophrenia, schizo is split, and then friend is mind, heart, or diaphragm. It's a Greek word for any of those.
By the way, one of my favorite top Sonic Youth songs is Schizophrenia. Check that song out. It's really good.
I like Kill Your Idols. That's a good one.
Well, if you like Kill Your Idols, you like Schizophrenia.
Okay.
That's good.
Who's Christoph? I just need to know.
Some like music critic.
Oh, okay.
It's an obscure reference.
How did it become a
Anyways,
fucking
nerd talk. Okay, but a delusion. So I'm trying to make a point here real quick. What is a delusion?
What we just looked up.
But like
when you're playing yourself, it's like you're not seeing what's here.
Despite incontrovertible evidence.
Yeah, to the contrary.
So, but how do you? What is a belief? So a belief is not delusional if it can't be incontrovertible, or it can't be incontrovertibly proven, or you know what I'm saying? Like a belief is not delusional if you can't definitively disprove it.
Say that one more time.
Like if I say I believe in God and I know God is real and I know God is there in heaven and speaks to me and so forth, take the hallucination part out of the window. God has a mission. God has a plan for me. God is telling me what to do. How can you disprove that?
Right, you can't.
So how could it possibly be labeled as a delusion?
Yeah, but
Cameron, you're
saying,
too fucking smart for the DSM.
No.
You know,
but
I don't think this is original. What I'm saying.
It's saying that it's about external reality. So God, I don't think would be considered part of external reality.
So it's not real. What you're saying?
Okay, all right.
So if you ask a Christian, is God real, like an actual real, externally real thing, or is it just like in your mind, imaginary?
Okay, yeah, right.
They would say.
Is it external? Is it part of external reality?
They would say
is it real? They would say it's real. So
yeah.
It is within the realm of external reality if you believe it.
I see. Yeah.
So, but you can't classify it as a delusion because it can't be proven one way or the other.
Well, can you
it's not incontrovertible.
Can you disprove unicorns?
No.
Because I mean, just because you haven't seen one.
Yeah, I mean, what is it even out of the realm of possibility that there's a horse with like a horn? Like, I mean,
right.
There are horses with horns this way. It's like deer and shit like that, you know, or whatever.
Yeah. So that could be considered like I mean, that's not a delusion if you believe in unicorns.
But let's just go into like delusion. Like, oh, I have this idea of something I can create and I really believe I can make it happen. Like, you'd be like, well, that's delusional. You're delusional.
Yeah.
You're delusional that you can do that. Oh, like you're delusional. You're going to be the top. Like, let's say you're a midget and you have no legs and you're like, I'm going to be the gold medal fucking Olympic swimmer in 2020, whatever. They're like, you're delusional. I mean, but I think according to the definition of a delusion, how can you prove it wrong?
Or would you call someone like a Steve Jobs? Was he delusional?
That's what I was going to say. Like, is Elon Musk delusional? Some people would say he's delusional because they're like, oh, you're never going to do that. It's not possible. But he's like, yeah, I'm going to do it anyways. And some of these guys end up being wrong. Some of them end up being right, even though no one believed it was possible. So I'm just looking at it from the perspective of how do you know what is a delusion? Wouldn't you have to have a agreed upon fact? You see, the thing is, even if there was an agreed upon definition of what is facts and what is not, isn't it still just an agreement? And therefore it's not proven. It's just what we agree.
Yeah.
So like if we all agree that the cause of World War I really was the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand, does that mean it is actually the cause or that it actually even happened just because we agree that it happened?
Yeah.
Our agreement doesn't make it. It's just we're like, well, we're just going to agree that that's what's real. So how, like as human beings, I mean, it's like, dude, fucking study Kant. We only see reality through our perceptions.
Mm-hmm.
So to be like, no, I see that cup there. I know it's there. Then how are hallucinations possible?
Yeah.
If you know everything you see is there because you see it, then you can't say a hallucination is a hallucination ever. You'd have to be like, well, I know that cup isn't there. Well, how do you know? Because someone else said it's not there. Okay. Is Trump the best president ever? I can get 80 million fucking people who are like, yes, and 80 million people who are like, he's the worst.
Yeah.
Well, that's just like a belief. Okay, but isn't a belief part of the definition of the word delusion? So wouldn't, though, these 80 million people who hate him say that the 80 million who love him are delusional?
Yeah.
Wouldn't you say all the people who supported Hitler were delusional?
Yeah.
They wouldn't have said that.
Right.
Maybe some of them would after the fact, or even then be like, oh, I'm just going along with it because I'm afraid, whatever. But some people believed it.
Yeah.
So when you start looking at the definitions of things, you're like, wow, really, at the end of the day, it's just hearing voices in your head, or it's just being delusional, or whatever the particular point is. There's different expressions of it. But why isn't it? Why when I say everybody is schizophrenic, we're like, oh, no, come on, it's a medically diagnosable thing. You can't just say because everyone has delusions that they're schizophrenic.
Right.
It doesn't affect their lives. Oh, so really, schizophrenia is about, does it affect your ability to participate in the system?
Yeah.
Because if you're a fucking homeless dude yelling on the street, and every time you get a job working at McDonald's, you start yelling to the burgers because you think they're trying to persecute you, it affects your ability to hold the job. So that's a delusion. But if you're there every time you're flipping the burger, praying to Jesus to make sure that the burger doesn't burn, but you get your job done and everyone's happy and people don't get scared off and you function in this McDonald's system, you're not delusional.
Right.
You're not schizophrenic, but the other guy is, just because it affected the system. And then you start seeing how all this shit is all there to make sure the system, and this is why I'm saying, like, and we say it, the whole point of religion, all this stuff, it's not really about anything other than keeping the system in place.
Well,
it's like all of these words that are building blocks for reality have all been embedded with the energy of the system. So the words right now are keeping the system in place. Yet all of these words can have a best for all definition. But it's on us to, one, define it, but then two is to live that, because you actually have to live it to embed it.
That one video was really with the two cult people, right, was cool because the schizophrenia autism thing, because they were like, you know, he goes, not taking your schizophrenia medication. People think like, oh, I'll just deal with it myself, therapy, whatever. He's like, that's a bad idea, because when you are going into these hallucinations, whatever, it's like it's in your brain doing the same thing that like taking hallucinogenic drugs is doing. It's actually harmful to you.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it was kind of justifying why you should take your medication.
Yeah.
Right. Which I understand that point. And I think when it becomes so severe that you literally are having an effect on other people, like it's like, well, you can't function. Like, do you have to work in the system to survive? Yes. Do I want the system to collapse and us all die? No.
Right.
So I get the argument. But then if you kind of extend it a little bit, it's like, well, okay, take the medication or don't take the medication. Let's say you're somebody who is not on the severe schizophrenic side. You're just on the, I hear voices in my head all day. It just happens to sound like my voice. And it tells me what people think about me or don't think about me. It tells me thoughts about fuck that person. That person's a bitch. I like that person. I like this. I don't like that. I should do this. I shouldn't do that. It's just your normal person having a fucking dialogue in your head, which everyone says is normal. And you're weird if you don't have it.
Right.
That's actually schizophrenia, not technically from a medical perspective, because it's not interfering with your ability to fit into the system.
Yeah.
But let me ask you a question. Does it have a negative effect on you anyways? Just like the guy who's in the delusions, who's not taking his medication. Like, well, that person dies when they're 30. Like, they'll actually die because it's fucking with your brain so much. Okay, but does this person die when they're 80?
Yeah.
Well, that's normal dying. That's dying at a normal age. Really? Because you look like a fucking shrinkled up crypt fucking raisin. Like, that doesn't look normal. That doesn't look good.
Yeah.
Oh, I got 80 years out of this fucking thing when I only could have gotten 30. If I had, maybe you could have got 5 million fucking years out of it if you had it like abused the fuck out of it, because you're like, yeah, but it's okay to have these kind of schizophrenic voices in my head because I'm still going to work and participating in this system. And as long as I'm doing that, I can get 80 good years out of it, maybe.
Yeah.
And therefore, that's much better than the guy who fucking just rejected it and couldn't fit into the system and died when he was 35.
Yeah.
Was it better? Because at the end of it, are you going to be like, wow, so glad this happened? Like, no, you're going to die and be like, what the fuck was I doing?
Right.
That doesn't mean people who are like totally off the fucking deep end schizophrenia, I just want them not to take their medication and die at 30. But it's like excusing everybody who's not that bad into really just participating in a low fucking grade level of real, actual schizophrenia.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because what if we redefined it and we had the ability to redefine the DSM and we just changed it to it affects your ability to do what's best for all?
Yeah.
So then every fucking thought and emotion and feeling you have is actually a delusion. And every belief you have is a fucking delusion. And everything you see that you're not able to direct in a way that's best is a hallucination.
That's a good definition.
Like when you see a woman with giant tits, you're like, fuck yeah, I'm going to talk to her. Isn't that a hallucination?
Wait, what do you mean?
Because you're seeing something attractive.
Mhm.
Is it?
Yeah, okay.
Isn't it just like a geometric shape?
Yeah.
Like when you see circles, are you like getting a hard on? But somehow when it's this particular geometric shape, suddenly you're like, it means something.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying? Like you're hallucinating something because someone from a different culture might look at that woman and be like, she is ugly. Right. You know what I mean? Like really, like this whole thing about these, like when people go to like these Asian countries and we're like, dude, look at that beautiful, sexy looking Asian woman. And they're like, oh, she's normal. She nothing, And you're like, what? They're like, that's not beautiful. That's just like our standard of beauty. Over there, they're like, it's nothing special. They like have a different standard of what they consider beautiful.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
That's why they're like, how are they with these ugly white men? They're like, no, I think he's amazing. He's like a strong white American man. Like they don't look at beauty the same way necessarily. So you're hallucinating something. It's like a layer of reality. You see what I'm saying? I would really, I also highly suggest people go on YouTube and look up people describing their schizophrenia episodes and their experiences and so forth. And you'll be like, wow. It's actually pretty mind-blowing when you see that, because then you start to relate to it in the sense of like when you're participating in your emotions and feelings about stuff, like when you're mad at your spouse, because it's so easy in a moment, if you really apply yourself, when you're angry at somebody, to just drop it and then be like, oh, it's over, because you're not participating in the energy anymore.
Yeah.
So it's like I know you're not seeing something that's not there, but you are. Do you know what I'm saying? Like you're imagining something that if you change your starting point, you don't participate in the energy in yourself, it's actually not there anymore. It doesn't change what the other person's doing, but it's not real for you anymore. You might still have to direct this person in their behavior because they're doing something real, but you're not it's like, have you ever gotten a text from somebody and they just say K, and you're like, what? So you almost feel like I have to put like a capital K with an exclamation mark just to make sure the person doesn't misinterpret that I'm not being flippant about what they said. Like, hey man, I really just want to say I appreciate you, you know, and you're like, K.
Yeah, you send me
You're
K's
like,
all the
but
time.
but they might think that, you know, but I always put them in groups of 3. But they might think that like, you know, oh, okay, like I didn't care.
Right. That was
But I
that
could
was
have been
one of
like,
the first things I had to do with Jess. It was great. And as soon as we started our relationship, she would just message me like, "Hey, can you let me know when you leave the office? You know, I'll have dinner ready for you." And I'd be like, "Okay." And she had to bring that up to her. She's like, "I reacted so hard to that because like I thought you like were annoyed by me or something." I was like, "No, literally, I'm just busy." Like she's like, "Okay." And now and it was so cool because we based our relationship off of an agreement. So she's like, "Oh, now I see what you're doing. Okay, not a big deal. Great. I know what to expect." I didn't have to go, "Oh, well, sorry, how do you want me to text you now?" It's like,
now
you know,
imagine
if I
she was
send K,
like,
maybe
didn't
I can
have
make it
a,
a little
yeah.
more creative, but it's like,
Imagine
yeah,
she didn't have a principle in herself of like why she should just drop that point.
yeah.
It's good for the you guys to communicate, but then let's say she didn't have the principle, and then she was like, "No, I don't feel loved and appreciated unless you put a response like this." So now it's
Yeah.
like you
Or it
have to just
reminds me
do
of my
that,
ex-boyfriend who used to do this
right?
and then
But
this.
but it's like now
Yeah,
you have to do that particular thing just to make sure that feeling is there every time.
right. Appeasing.
That's what I mean by it's like a hallucination. It's like a delusion.
Yeah.
It's not fucking real. And that's just based on a belief. Or it's like love is a fucking delusion.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I love my wife. Like, really? Everything? Well, no, not everything. You know, people like, no, I love every single thing about it. It's like, yeah, only if they do what you want. So you just see like, and then you go beyond that and you realize the delusion of love is the answer to everything. Or God is the answer. You just realize like it's delusions compounded upon delusions. So by the time we get to the final delusion, it's like, oh, that's not a big deal because you're so used to accepting little tiny delusions in every fucking way you interact in this world.
And we're all losing.
Yeah. D, losing.
We're losing.
D, like SM.
Instead of winning, we should be winning.
D,
Win-wins.
D losing. You're a delusional loser.
Hey, one other way that like with the messaging, another thing too to be aware of is how much you send exclamation points. I know you guys don't do this, but a lot of people,
I do,
it's a
depending on the person.
subconscious. Was it?
I do, depending on the person.
Well, yeah, because you know how to work with people, right?
Depends on if that person you know where they're at. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I don't need
And
to
not
do that with you.
necessarily like Drake just drop it in the chat like all these, right? But it's like a classic thing, right? Where you like
Cool! Exclamation mark.
Yeah, or like you send multiple sentences and multiple ones of them have exclamation points.
Oh, okay, got it.
It subconsciously comes across as you're like needing their approval. It's really fascinating when you start to look at the dynamics of it. It's like, hey man, I'll be there. Look forward to seeing you. I hope you're good.
Like, I promise. I like you. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, I'm enthusiastic.
And then but it's so subconscious, most people don't see it. But then that person's like, oh, this person like, you know, it's like a neediness.
Person
And then
likes me.
really start experimenting with it where you don't send any exclamations. You know, it's just it's fun because we have all these moments throughout the day where we can push points with people, right? We can push points within ourselves, and you can like use every single day really as a gift and an opportunity. Because like Cam, you were saying, you can drop the anger in a moment, right? You could drop the frustration in a moment, but then in that there's a little space that opens up where you could then say, okay, I'm going to correct myself so I can prevent these consequences from happening. Or you're a lazy fuck and you ignore it. You're like, oh, I'll change my starting point. Oh, time loop. Right. And so it's like self-perfection is moment by moment by moment. But over time, like I've been doing this for what, 4 years? I lost track by now. But it's like you see the cumulative effect and it's fucking awesome. And then you see it in other people in the group too. And it's like, wow, we can really do this. Like we're actually changing the system.
That's why when we get together, it's like so fun because
Yeah.
you've got rid of a lot of the bullshit, you know. And then obviously the people who are new, that you can support them. Hey, I just thought of a thing that people can do as an experiment, right? I mean, I'm sure none of them are listening right now, but
Don't use the
like,
exclamation point in
no,
your
no, no.
messages at all.
Since we're talking about experiments, not like Christians, right? What if for an experiment you just said to God, like, God, just as an experiment, I don't believe in you. But then I'm still going to act as if the same way I would as if I believed in God. But I'm just going to say I don't believe in God. And I'm going to tell people God doesn't exist. But I'm still going to act exactly the way I would as if God did exist, other than the fact that you're saying he exists. Would anything change?
I mean, your personal experience.
I don't know, because you would get the Agent Smiths who you say like, "Hey, God's not real," and then they'd be like, "No, brother, you must come back to the Lord."
Like I'm just.
But is
I'm
it
just,
possible to act in a way in accordance with what God would want you to?
Oh,
Other than
saying
maybe
he
you're
exists.
breaking the
I see,
commandment that you believe he says you have to say he exists. Other than that point, which seems like pretty arbitrary, like could you act in accordance with it even
I
though
don't
you
know.
said he didn't exist?
I think.
I don't know, man.
I think
they
the
should just
initial
drop it
thing that would come
altogether.
up would be like the immediate firewall of like, I can't say God doesn't exist, because then I'll go to hell.
That's my
Who are
point.
you, fucking
That's my
Satan,
point.
Cameron? What are
That's
you,
my
the
point.
reincarnation of Aleister Crowley? Huh? Is that why you shaved your head that one time?
Okay.
And I saw that picture of
If
you
I
under
make
the-
a hamburger
Uh-huh.
and I say to you, Drake, I think this is probably the worst hamburger I've ever made. It's a terrible hamburger. And I give it to you. Other than the fact that I've primed you,
Yeah.
does it affect whether it's actually a good hamburger?
I mean,
Well, what's interesting is like,
I'm primed.
Other than the priming, other than
Yeah.
that, does it actually affect the reality of it?
no, it doesn't.
I mean, probably not that much. I
Well, if it does, that means McDonald's is actually great and you do love it.
no. But the priming
Because
does
I
play an
told you it's
effect.
good.
Drake is beyond McDonald's influence, but he does accept a little bit of Cameron
No,
influence.
because I understand that priming does have an effect. Like, for instance,
Just on your experience of it,
yeah,
but
like
not on the reality of it.
like there's no reason why, like, you know, when you have a
If you give your kid everything they need,
yeah,
and you're there for them, you're attentive, and you say, "I don't love you."
it depends on how you impulse them with the word love.
Doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, for sure.
Yeah, and how you say it.
I mean,
Because
let's just say it means I have a strong feeling of affection for you. I feel very strong energy when I'm around you. And you say, I don't have that.
yeah,
I don't love you.
okay, that's irrelevant though.
But I give you everything you need. You need something, you talk to me, I educate you, I support you, I play with you, I hang out with you, we have fun, we do all these things together, but I don't love you. What do you mean you don't love me, Daddy? I don't have any strong feeling of positive feeling towards you.
Yeah.
You hate me? You feel bad about me? Nope, just don't feel anything.
You're a narcissist. What do they call those?
But what about when we
Sociopath?
play and we're having fun? Oh yeah, I'm enjoying that. I'm loving that. That's great. Like that's fun.
Yeah.
Right. And when you're there, it's great. But whenever you do something that is not best, I don't like that. And I don't feel good about it.
Yeah.
So, but you sometimes feel good about me. Yeah. I mean, I feel good in myself in the moment when we're doing something enjoyable.
Yeah.
And even when you do something and you're having fun, I get some feeling of enjoyment about that. But
Yeah.
I don't love you. Like I don't have a constant feeling just in my mind, imagination that I just love you all the time. What? How can I ever live as a human being and be satisfied and have any goals or purpose or anything and like just be satisfied and have high self-esteem if my dad doesn't constantly have these feelings about me all the time?
Yeah.
And not be always thinking about me only and like I'm the most important thing in the world. But he
Right.
gives me everything I need and supports me and educates. It's like, do you see how fucking delusional?
Yeah.
You'd be like, no. Actually, all that other stuff doesn't matter as long as you love them.
Yeah.
That's what most parents do.
Yeah. If you came to me and you said this is the worst burger I've ever created, and I bit into it, and that's like this, like how you're biting into your sandwich right now, yeah, which is just literally tomatoes and sourdough.
Katie, it's the worst fucking piece of bread and tomatoes I've ever had. So nourishing. I fucking hate this. Oh, the disrespect.
Man, every morning I'm like, because Christine makes sourdough and we eat that and like her eggs and all this stuff. Like every morning I'm like, dude, this is the best fucking sandwich I've ever, because I literally feel that way every morning. It's like,
So, I mean, obviously, is there any problem of like if you enjoy it to acknowledge that you enjoy it? Like, no.
yeah.
Like when my child says, I love you, I'm like, I love you too.
Yeah.
But I genuinely mean it.
Yeah.
But then also, if they're trying to manipulate me to do something that is not best by going, but I love you, I'm like, I don't care.
Right.
Like, great. What does that have to fucking do with what we're talking about right now? Or
Yeah.
I hate you. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even have to even say that, but it's just like, okay, that doesn't change because like I'm not making the decision based on that information, based on that feeling.
Right.
That's the degree to which a politician manipulates people. Because
Yep.
if you allow that in that point, you allow it all over.
Right.
And the
In
whole thing
church
of
too.
everybody believing in God, church, everything is just constantly being manipulated through words, but by your feelings about these words. It's not even the reality of it because Christians don't want to take responsibility for making sure every single person has exactly what they need. It's like, oh no, only when it's of my own greatness, basically, every day that I choose to do it because it's of my choosing that I'm doing it. And that's what's making it great. It's like, no, whether you chose it or not, I don't give a fuck. It's a matter of whether the person actually has what they need. Does it matter whether a child isn't raped because you chose for them not to be, or because we just made sure it didn't happen?
Yeah.
Like whether I wanted to make that happen or not, does it fucking matter?
Right.
Like,
Dude,
obviously, at the end of the day,
Christian-
at the end of the day, it's not sustainable if people are doing it against their will. So I agree with that. It's not about enforcing it, but
Right.
it's like the idea that if we can't be creative enough to come up with a system to ensure everyone has what they need, because the only way to do that is just to take from all the people who have.
But again, that's why education is just so important.
This is why, yeah. Well, education is like understanding reality, understanding history, and realizing, oh, I'm actually being manipulated. The money system is actually taking from those people.
Yeah.
That's why they don't have any.
And it's actually like education is being able to understand destiny and you know all the information that we have that we have available to everyone, being able to understand that information, but also not just going into a point of like it's just some like emotional thing that you're trying to do or like you know just some belief that you have to follow, but rather
a moral
like
superiority thing.
right, a moral superiority, but rather like I understand this and I'm understanding what's happening in the world and the practical point of like how to use this information to change that versus like how people will use just spirituality where it's like yes, I'm morally superior because I know the law of attraction or whatever. Like I am God. And it's like, but you're not doing anything. Like if you're God, like you're being kind of an asshole. Like with the way that you create. You're pretty
like if you're
stupid.
God, let's then fucking change the system. All right.
Hold on. You have free will. You can choose. But also, if you choose the wrong thing, I'm going to punish you forever.
Right. Yeah. Hey,
it's conditional
Cam,
free will.
you are free to choose whatever you'd like to do.
Look at this. Katie made this for me. Also, these eggs.
Yeah.
You see how they're runny, right? That's how I like it.
Yeah.
That's how I prefer it.
Yeah.
So she's considering that. Because like the kids would not eat that way, and she wouldn't eat it that way. She would like it very like, over hard or whatever they call it, right? But she's like actually considered that.
Wow.
Yeah. I made a post the other day too.
Do I care in this moment if she's over there going like, oh, Cameron, I just love him so much and I feel this way? I'm like, this is what I care about.
Right.
Just like I would expect her to be like, okay, you're saying you love me, but you keep fucking making my eggs the way I don't want to eat them. Like, I don't enjoy it. Like, that doesn't mean I have to hate you. But you see, I mean, like, it's a reality.
Yeah.
And so there is gratitude in this. I'm like, wow, I'm really grateful. Like, because I didn't even ask for this. This is from our chickens.
So blessed.
Oh, I thought you said when she made it that she laid those eggs.
I had the other day.
Katie laid these eggs for me.
Jess was making banana bread, and she knows that I really enjoy chocolate chips. I like chocolate on pretty much everything. And she like went because we didn't have any chocolate chips left in the house, but we have a trail mix that has chocolate chips, and she like went through it and like picked out the chocolate chips and put it in the bread. I was like, wow, that's like I've made some posts on Facebook like you got to get a wife that loves you that much, but it's actually it's like. And she's not sitting there dwelling like, how can I make his experience so amazing? It's like she has better shit to focus on. But in those moments where she can see
I bet you she enjoyed doing it.
I bet too. I know. I think her level of how much scheming she did
Yeah.
was pretty much nothing. It was just in the moment. She's like, oh shit, we don't have chocolate chips.
I have a solution. I can do this, right? And
Yeah.
like she'd actually have to care about it. So it's in the sense that she thinks that it's a valid thing to do.
Yeah.
But the problem is, let's say you had said something and she was angry with you.
She puts
Like
fucking
let's say you're
poison
making
in the
let's say you're
banana
making the
bread.
decisions based on your emotional state. Would it be valid for her to be like, fuck him, he doesn't get any chocolate chips today because I'm mad at him? Like, no, it'd be like, whether you like it me or not in this moment, if you can make the thing the way it is, I actually prefer it. Why shouldn't they do that?
Yeah, yeah.
So people would not do it. They wouldn't. They would say like, "Oh, she must love you because she did that."
Well, they would say, "I don't."
You don't
want
know how
you
she
to be
felt
happy.
in that moment.
I don't want you to be happy. If I'm upset, I don't want you to be happy. Like, why should
It is
you be
quite
happy?
possible that Jess was irritated. I'm not saying she was. I'm just making up the thing. It's quite possible she was mad at you about something, but yet she could have made the choice of like, "Hey, but I'm still going to go get these chocolate chips and make it the way he wants, even though I don't feel a good thing about him." So my point being, people would assume because she did that, she must feel a certain way about you. But you can imagine a scenario where she could have done that, even though she didn't feel that. It is physically possible to do it. And in that context, what do you care about? Whether she felt a certain way in that moment or
Or if
whether
I
she
had
did
chocolate chips in my
this.
damn banana bread.
Right.
Yeah,
Like,
that one.
and somebody
Way
can be
more.
like, oh, that's because we put this emphasis on this feeling thing. Like somehow it matters. It's like, I'm just telling you, I have free will. I get to choose what matters to me or not. And that part doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The part that
And
matters
Cameron,
is
then
like
you
if the
sound
kid
wait,
gets
just like
fed.
a
but
heartless
then
jerk.
you're
I sound like a
labeled
fucking
as
Satan
like
worshiper. Like,
you're
well, sign me up.
you're labeled as like something that's like, oh yeah, I wouldn't
What
want
is
to
that
be
word?
like that.
Sociopath?
Is
What's the other one? Not sociopath.
psychopath?
Psychopath.
Yeah.
Psychopath. Cameron's a fucking psychopath. I'm gonna
But
write
but
Reddit articles about you, Cameron.
but literally you're labeled as that as like something that's like, oh, you don't want to be like that.
Yeah.
Which keeps
Like
you
you don't want to be a guy who doesn't feel feelings, or a
right, which
woman who
keeps
doesn't
you
feel feelings.
like trapped. And
As
it's
if
the
you could
same,
stop yourself from feeling feelings.
it's literally the same thing as I cannot say that I don't believe in God because then I will go to hell. Like I can't say that no,
Yeah.
that these feelings that you're feeling are not important to me because then I would
Well,
surely go to hell.
Can an atheist volunteer at a soup bank or a soup kitchen?
Are you
bet
trying to
there's
say
somewhere he
blood bank
can't.
slash soup kitchen?
You have to have
soup
like
bank?
that on his name badge though.
Just-
That says he's an atheist.
Can
Yeah,
sorry, guys.
volunteer their blood for the soup kitchen?
It's like it's
I
like
believe
earlier in the
your soup.
episode. Cameron was giving that example of you have like this radio frequency that's like broadcasting from you, and when you stop it or when you switch the channel, it's like all the other radio signal you start to there's like a dissonance that starts to happen. And if you're a beast, you just fucking figure it out and get them to join your fucking signal. And if you're a little bitch, you just be like, oh, I'll just flip it back on or just ignore it or whatever. And so it's like it's on us
The whole
to continue to lead the
yeah
way. I'm just
the
like flip the signal.
the whole criticism about being atheist versus Christian is like, well, if everyone's atheist, they have no meaning and purpose. There's no higher authority to determine what's right and wrong. Anything goes, everything will go to shit. And I'm like,
Terrible argument.
but couldn't you just like decide like, no, I'm not going to do that? Well, but if there wasn't a God, you wouldn't. I'm like, well, I'm doing it. Like, I would say there's a God, and I'm more serious about changing the system and solving the problem than the Christians or whoever believes in God.
Yeah.
Now there's all these people who are like, oh, Muslim, and it's great.
Right.
Dude, I just was reading a thing about some dude who's like going to prison or whatever because he was like trying to logically dismantle something in the Islam thing. Like, you want to live in that fucking society?
Oh wow. So it's very much like the Holocaust denier in a country where you're not allowed to do that. See, that shit is insane too. And I know we're wrapping up here, but like that shit is insane. Where it's like, okay, do you want to live in a world where you're forced to accept the mainstream narrative idea of something, which is really the whole point of it is to keep you enslaved within the system. That's the whole point of what we're saying today is everything that you've been educated on, even the way that they diagnose, psychotic disorders or whatever, all of it is just geared towards doing the bidding of the system.
What happens when the system goes, you know what? actually science can prove there is no God.
Yeah, right.
Incontrovertibly.
Yeah. There you go. And
then
now
suddenly, like, your delusions are classified as schizophrenia, and you get to be locked up.
Yeah. And
because you're not going along with whatever thing, therefore it's affecting you at work, life, whatever, according to the current standards at that time.
Right. Right.
What happens when denying the Holocaust is equivalent to denying trans lives matter or exist or whatever?
Yeah.
Like, you don't get to determine that. So if you give any point where you're like, I'm allowed to have my beliefs, it's like, well, how do we agree on a common reality? And who gets to define what the common reality is? And all we're saying is, look, if everybody forgives all the bullshit inside of themselves and has the same vocabulary, wouldn't we naturally then basically agree on everything? And it wouldn't be through force.
Yeah.
We'd still have free will. Like, it's the only way. Because even if you're like, well, no, God, blah, 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 free will, God, it's believe in God. Do you get to determine which God it is? Because according to the statistics, it's going to be the Muslim God. Is that what you want? Because that's what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you want real education for life, as opposed to just being educated for the system, which isn't going to bring you anything, and like,
it's not going to bring you eggs.
It's not going to bring you eggs. Not sunny side up.
Not real eggs from a real chicken.
Not
that's been walking around on grass.
3D. It'll just be 3D printed egg material from your coffin pod.
There you go. There you go. And then
for
you'll die
a month.
You'll die with nothing. You'll die with like having left nothing. No children, no legacy.
But someone else will take your coffin pod, and then you'll be sitting there in purgatory afterwards going, God damn it. Fucked up. Right. Yeah, it's as simple as like there's these polarities out there, right? You have like, I believe in God, I don't believe in God, and it's this polarity shit. And we can actually just not participate, drop it, and then do what's best for all, looking at the actual reality. So join us or else.
Else you're gonna live in a coffin.
Join us now.
Sooner or later.
Sooner or later, you're gonna fucking join.
Sooner or later, you're gonna wake up in a coffin and be like, "Oh, what the fuck have I done?"
Right. So yeah, just you fix it for yourself, and also realize part of you fixing it for yourself is you learning how to help other people do that too, consistently every fucking day. Not that hard.
All right, y'all. See you next week.
All right. Bye.